Hey guys, Tarke here, and today we are joined by Raiz, Nugiyen Octavian for episode number 36 of Baeclast, and we're going to be talking a lot of things which aren't necessarily Path of XL related. But first, what has everyone been up to? Raiz, what have you been up to?
A lot of Path of Diablo, so the Diablo 2 mod. Quite a bit of racing stuff too, since we just had the level 85 duo race. Let's just say I almost got second, you know? Got the accomplishment.
It's a generous way of putting it.
And yeah, although huge props to Havoc and Kammell, because they clearly put in a ton of work into this. They practiced off stream and on different accounts and everything. And they really had it decked out. I mean, we really felt like we didn't stand a chance. And a vast majority of that race was since I was playing with Dead and Doom, and we had like insane amounts of bad RNG to the point where like I was on a 2-link in Act 3.5 while 2 people were checking vendors and stuff like that. Like trying to keep that shit together and just like not complain our brains out and trying to get Dead and Doom to just not tilt and rage quit. it was an interesting experience, but a really fun one. Honestly, dual races in PoE. Oof. Maybe a dual 1-month race. That'd be cool. I don't know.
That might be a bit long. I will admit, though, the duo race was a lot more interesting because of all the different strategies people had. So I'm hoping that we see more stuff like that.
See, the extra fun part is that the strategies, like, yeah, you can optimize a lot of stuff when leveling up, and that's like boils down to speed, which I thought like is going to be our strength. But yeah, our normal run was like literally 10 minutes later in like Act 5 than what we had on the worst practice run. So it didn't go according to plan. But our plan was to like burst through, and then we're probably gonna get our ass kicked once we get to maps because there's so many different strategies. It ended up being way worse than that. Like we really got our ass kicked. There were so many people with so many different cool strategies, and that was just really fun because it's just very different to the usual racing and all these different approaches that all seem to work depending on RNG, I suppose. Were just really cool to watch, because usually when you get to maps in these sort of races, that's kind of where everybody just goes, okay, no, they're just gonna get XP, and that's all. Okay, he has good map RNG, he wins. He has bad map RNG, he loses.
Yeah.
But no, a lot of thinking went into this one, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Right, why didn't you have good strategies? Did
No,
you?
we had a good strategy.
Okay.
We had a good strategy, but we also fucked up setting it up, or I suppose I did. So our strategy was to go top right and just clear up, just basically the tie strategy, if anybody knows it. It's to go top right primarily on the Atlas, I'm saying, and stick to that section of the map, controlling the Shaper influence so that you can get your Zana levels. And that way you could get the tier 9 shit maps on a 2 chaos investment every time you put in a map. And whenever we wouldn't be doing that, we would be doing probably city squares, or we would be shaping the city squares, either beach or city square. We didn't quite have that mapped out. We simply didn't, we didn't put in enough effort, unfortunately. And yeah, all of that went to shit because we completely fucked it up. So our shaper influence was like all over the place, and it was just a tragedy. And then we went with the, okay, let's just hope for the best and try and get the highest map possible. And then since we both would hopefully have high maps, we would just like come together towards the last minutes of the race and just run our best maps together and try and get just clear them out as fast as possible, because Stormbright is just that strong. It does genuinely increase your clear speed if you're 2 people. But then Dead and Doom died, and then I died, and then that was the race.
So you decided to both go for the, like, you would both map, essentially? Just see
how... our strat was mostly like try and just be first in the initial stages, and then try and just play off of each other, and hopefully neither one of us dies, and then everybody else puts in more effort into like a single person, and this one person will be ahead of us for sure, but it's also more likely that they're going to die. And just about everybody did, except Havoc, who just played tremendously well. And then we also both died, so that didn't work out either. So,
Havoc, Havoc and Kammell also made an interesting adaptation where they, instead of going Elementalist or Inquisitor with the Stormbrand, Havoc played a Trickster Stormbrand because you need better gear at that point in the game for Trickster to do enough damage to like clear reliably. But since you have two players, you can funnel better gear onto the Trickster, and then the Trickster also gets more EHP from, crazy mana scaling with Mind Over Matter and more defensiveness just because you take the reduced damage from the Mind Over Matter node on Trickster as well. It's much more reliable to not die, which was rule one of their strat.
Yeah, that was interesting. I think Ty's strategy, honestly, was the best. Tai was the person who took the second spot. And he was, I'm not sure what his partner was playing. I think he died in pretty early stages. And Tai ended up playing Elementalist with, I think it was just a 3-linked Herald of Ice. Obviously, he was looking to 4-link it because he had quite a bit of mana left over. But somehow his gear just was really good. He had like 5k HP without MOM, which was more than I had with MOM. So he just geared up really well. And with the Herald of Ice just chaining through, yeah, that was really fast. I would imagine that if somebody like that makes it till the end of the race and like both players have like an optimized run, that should be better than a Trickster, but I don't know. I'd have to watch the VODs, honestly. It's so hard to tell because, yeah, Havoc just did really, really, really freaking well. And obviously with Kammell kind of supporting him, yeah, it was really good.
Can I just say, though, briefly, though?
Yeah, go.
Raiz, do you remember our start of League Trickster Elementalist argument? I was very excited when I saw Trickster doing things. I was like, yeah, fuck you, Raiz. So,
I love Trickster. Good. Just so we're clear, because a lot of people think I don't like Trickster. I love Trickster. It's just, yeah, if you're racing for like 100 or something, then yeah, it's just not as good.
Go on, Nugget. Go on, Nugget.
I think a lot of people underestimate how powerful Trickster is. The amount of cast speed you get and the sustain of charges is actually insane. A lot of the players right now run Ice Bite, which is a terrible damage link, but they do it for the frenzy charges. So you essentially get a more multiplier by not having to run that link.
I mean they do it for freezing also.
I mean, you could add
you go crits.
Yeah, or you could.
Yeah, but then what do you freeze
like
with?
Added cold if you wanted to.
Added cold. It's way more damage.
It kind of depends. I mean, it's like I think you need like 6 frenzy charges.
Yeah, but you're not getting that damage. In a race situation, right?
I mean, you're more likely to get that in a race situation because you're going yellow.
Like 2 things that are going to happen here. One, whenever you actually end up having to kill the betrayals, which you do, and your frenzy charges fall off, you're fucked. You do like way less damage, a single target goes down. With added cold, it's always the same. And it does I think Ice Bite is like a 20% more multiplier versus like a 30 of the added cold when you have the charges. And it plummets way down to like 5-10 when you don't. It's like way more consistent and it's more damage and it freezes better, especially if you're crit. And if you're playing charges, Elementalist, it makes total sense to go Ice Bite. It's just Trickster is a lot better than we give it credit. It's just it's only a map. It's only good in maps, and it doesn't do well the moment like you go to like end game bosses and things start to like take a little bit too long. If that makes sense.
I mean, you can even boss like decently well in Trickster. I've played predominantly only Trickster this league. There's a few like nice things about it, especially since when most people say bosses, they mean shit like Elder and stuff. The increased recovery node is nearly always active for most of Elder because there's always ads and stuff spawning. And especially if you're doing anything with like any kind of regen, having that 70% recovery ticking is so strong, so strong. But yeah,
I think Trickster is really good and it's really powerful in like AR stages. The problem is that just about everything you get from Trickster, you get in like abundance from just gear eventually. And that's really where my problem is. Eventually you get enough attack speed. Eventually you just you have so much cast speed now on gear. It's really ridiculous. And it just catches up with you. Whenever I played Trickster, that was always the problem where I would get to a point where like, yeah, it's giving me 40% cast and attack speed. That's really insane. But realistically, it's such a tiny increase because I already invested into all this gear that it's just rarely worth it.
No, for like 100%.
But when it works, it freaking really works well.
Yeah. I actually think one of the bigger things is since we're seeing a lot more people doing like running based stuff or flame dash based stuff and less like shield charge meta, I think that's one thing which does make Trickster a lot less valuable because a lot less people are really using all that extra attack speed on them. But one thing which
I feel like
I'll go on.
I think Trickster actually makes a lot of sense now as well with the with how the nodes are located. Like all the good brand nodes are like on the right. They're like really insane.
Yeah, no, I did some league start stuff and it flows really clean with brands and tricksters and everything. But I just
getting the league kicked off, yeah, it's really strong. Because like I realized with Templar and with Witch, you really don't get a whole lot of damage like early enough. That was a big problem where it's almost like I might as well just take life nodes because they're super accessible. But then to get on over to like all the celestial nodes and the brand nodes and the minion nodes, it just takes so long.
But just to backtrack a little bit, when you said specifically that when normally with these races, the mapping bit's the most like boring bit and how that changed with the duo, that was one thing which I noticed a lot because I casted the first Kammell race and it was really fun to cast until you guys got to like Act 9, Act 10, and then it was like, okay, I want to go to bed now. Whereas Octavian, you casted this one, like for you, what was like the boom bit for you, you know?
It got more interesting as people entered mapping, actually, because that's where strategies diverged. We saw Zizaran and Embu were doing one of the more interesting strats. Zizaran was like just blitzing through maps to try and hit the highest tier maps. So he wasn't doing the, sticking to a specific corner. That did end up biting him in the ass because he ended up ripping in a high tier map to some syndicates. By high tier, I mean like tier 8 or something, but that's, high tier for one of these races. But Embu, in the meanwhile, was left behind in delving and was pushing down to like 60 plus delves so he could start targeting jewelry nodes, doing the chaos recipe, giving the chaos to Ziz, and having him use Zana, map device mods. So like domination or shaping maps or something. Which other people were doing the chaos recipe out of drops from maps, but this was like supposedly a way to generate even more chaos. And then we had, people in for an interview afterwards, and I think one of the main criticisms of that was that you don't need as much chaos as that generates necessarily. Like Embu was saying in practice runs, they were making like 70, 80 chaos within like, the hour and a half or so that he was actually at that depth, because it takes a while to get down there. And that's just like, you're not going to run enough maps to even use all of that at that point.
Yeah, that was a really fun part, honestly, because that's kind of where I feel a lot of the, especially NA racers that've been racing for just a really long time, like your Hellmans, Gorathas, and Waggles, they just generally would get to mapping and they'd just be like, I don't care anymore. And that's kind of what would happen a lot to me too, where it's just kind of the same grind as always. But with this race, yeah, it was very interesting.
Speaking of Garatha and Wago, I am very sad that they ripped a little earlier in the race because they had some interesting strategies that I saw during their practice runs. Nobody else got around to doing it, but there were some people, I think they were the ones doing it the most in their practice, that were farming early Syndicate to try and get Chimeria into Fortification and farm Harbinger Orbs to then use on yellow maps and turn them into T10 beachheads for massive XP.
They were my favorites for the race because I was like, if anyone's... So I predicted it'd be Steel and Gucci because I thought they'd be the most consistent. But I thought if anyone had the glowy brain shit, it would be Waggle and Garatha. And then they died. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I thought they're going to win too. That was my pick for the race.
But since we're on the whole race topic, since we have 2 professional racers in the chat, one thing that I'm curious, what do you think is the sweet spot when it comes to frequency? Because too many races too close together, the races burn out, it's less interesting for the viewer. What would you say is like the right amount per league sort of thing?
It really depends on the length of the race, I think.
Yeah.
Like something even every weekend, I think would work as long as it's very short. It's like a 1 hour event on Saturday, 1 hour event on Sunday, and then it's done. And maybe throw in some rewards and all this sort of stuff. But like if it's this like big 85 thing, I think once a month that works. The problem is that nobody will get into it right now because like how can you? You have to get into like the 85 race, you have to have prior experience, or you have to put in a lot of really unrewarding work to practice. And yeah, I
Like
feel like
every
there's
other
useless
game that
ways.
is competitive.
Yeah, or just do
I
something
mean,
else.
it's just, I don't understand this. Like everyone needs, like, for anyone to get into it, you have to go through work. I mean, yes. Sorry, that's how things work in life.
To be fair, though, in a lot of other scenes, because the Path of Exile racing scene is relatively small, like if we're
Mhm.
talking other competitive gaming scenes, you have a lot of different tournament circuits you could compete at.
That's true.
You get to compete against other high-level players more frequently.
There are more
Whereas,
tiers, right? That you can progress through.
yeah, there's like an
That's true.
amateur and
That's
and
true.
a pro.
There's no tier here.
No, there's
I
like
mean, even
one.
even if you play online, like if you're playing Overwatch, right? Like I don't think any pro in any video game really starts off with, "Hey, I'm gonna be a pro at this," when they've never played the game and they're a total noob. They just kind of play, and then eventually they're like, "Oh, okay, I'm pretty good. I'm gonna try it and get there." Nobody starts off with, "Wow, this really sucks. Hopefully, I'll
Yeah,
get
yeah.
good one day."
Yeah, it's true.
So it's kind
I
of, yeah,
think
it's kind of
one thing though
unfortunate.
is it's also, I think these longer races, the less frequent. If you're like a streamer who's like, oh, I want to try and get known, for those kinds of people, it's a lot better, right? Because then it's like, oh, I'll practice, I'll get good at the racing. It's a small thing. Because it's one of those things of, if you're watching like a 1 hour event, you're more likely to just watch someone like Ziz or someone like Raiz. And like the shorter the race, the less likely you are to rip, the less likely you are to watch all these different people. Whereas I'm sure there are a lot of people who would be far more likely to get discovered over like a 10-hour race, you know? I mean, even just someone like Ty, who's like a really fucking good racer, if you asked like 3 months ago the average dude, oh, who's Ty? They'd be like, I don't fucking know. Whereas
I didn't
now,
know.
because of this, you're like, oh shit, yeah, that's that guy who's like really good at the thing. So, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
You look like you're having a little chuckle there, Nuggy.
I'm just thinking,
Hmm.
just contemplating. I think no, I think you're right. But I also think that in terms of like the 1 hour, if it's just a 1 hour race in a weekend, that's kind of like, I don't know. That seems like very little.
Yeah, it's
And
little.
As
It
an-
leaves
as
you
a-
hungry.
No, but as an event, I don't know. Just 1 hour, you make one mistake within the first 2 minutes, is like, oh, I just forget about it. I'm coming.
It
Yeah,
also
then you
like
try on Sunday.
it
Yeah.
really
Do it
limits
again,
you.
and then you're hungry and you
It,
want more.
it limits you in terms of
Too
what
much
the goal of the
RNG.
race can be, though, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
race every time would be, something in the early acts, and that's it, which I think would also hurt audience retention. If
I
there's
think
some
the
That's
consistency.
longer I think you either have to have like a set of races going on, right? It's like we have like a little, maybe like a little King of the Hill or something, like where there's a bit of a progression throughout the short races that people can follow throughout like the same length of a day. Like no like elaborate like 3-day stint where like there's like 8 races a day. No, like it's like maybe like 4 of them or something.
I really like
Or
the 24-hour Malachi blamps and stuff like that. That was really cool.
yes, or that type of style where we have like a race towards a certain goal. I think that's like the best way to do it.
I think also, I feel like the 1 hour races are only things that GGG should organize, because I don't think a 1 hour race is worth organizing. Like, if you think about the amount of work which goes into just trying to get 4 people to commit to, oh, we're doing Baeclast on this day. Yeah, we're definitely doing Baeclast on this day. Okay. Doing all of that work to organize a 1 hour race doesn't seem like it'd be worthwhile to me. That seems like you'd be doing way too much work for too little kind of thing. Whereas having like doing that much work once a month for a big thing, which is like a whole day, that's like an event, people can build towards it, it seems good.
No. I'm talking strictly if this was organized by GGG, just to introduce like old and new players to racing. Because realistically, I mean, back when racing was completely taken away, I mean, the game had like 10,000 average players, on Steam. So now it's like 20,000. So that was like 20,000. Now, even now, there's like 60. I think there's like 50,000 players right now, and like the second 50,000 players just on Steam. So that's like 100th. You know, that's 10 times more. It's a lot of people, and a lot of the old schoolers also quit. It's a lot of people that just don't know anything about it, but some are looking to get into it, and they just will. Unless there's a little bit of support from GG, there's really going to be very little opportunity to do so. So if you participate in a big event, it's like, oh, I don't want to, you know, be lame. I don't want to lose. I don't want everybody to see that I suck, right? So you have to have that like level of I'm already pretty decent and I won't absolutely embarrass myself if I partake in something like this when like 10,000 people are watching me being casted by Ziggy D, right? Because that's like a pretty big discouragement, I think. So
Quick
that
thing,
little bit of a stepping stone is nice.
just since you mentioned like numbers, I spoke to Chris. This was a few leagues. This was in July of 2018. I was trying to ballpark numbers for a website I was helping Grim with at the time, and we were trying to get like what's the average amount of people who play over a month, and this is very rough estimated numbers. If you include Xbox, Taiwan, China, etc., I think a safe 2 million.
What? That can't be real.
That's what, over a month, you said?
Yeah.
Hmm.
A few million people is a safe estimate. That's from Chris. And that's across everything. Like everything.
Whenever a new league pops, there's like 2 million.
In July?
So that was, what, 6 months ago? So that was like 2 leagues back? What would that be, like Incursion or something? And the game's gotten bigger since then?
But what are we talking here? Is it like individual, like unique logins?
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that also includes shit like
it's not
bots
concurrent.
and,
like
not
Raiz was
these
talking
aren't
about.
concurrent, but these are just like the idea.
unique logins. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. This is not.
That's
That
sounding
was insane.
crazy. What the hell?
But like, even if you cut that number like in quarters, because like you get rid of bots, you get rid of this and the other. Even if you would say, like, 500,000, so that's like the game is a lot bigger than people think it is.
No, I don't think. No, I don't think that's cutting. I think they've already taken into account bots.
Yeah.
Like they're estimating a unique player, like not a bot, but an actual player login. I think 2 million does not sound ridiculous at all, considering we have hundreds of thousands of concurrent players doing league
That's
starts.
completely different. I mean, it's hard to trace those numbers, and I understand why it's such a rough ballpark because, well, a lot of it is just the fact that it's a free-to-play game, right? Like, so are those people really players, or did they just like download the game and play it for 10 minutes? Like, it's a unique login, but that guy's not playing the game. Because in you said July, right? It was 7. That was the start of some leagues. I think that was Incursion.
Yes.
75,364 players just on Steam. So that's 140 average over the course of July. Oh no, that's peak actually. Sorry.
And
That's
also,
viewers.
that's not including Xbox
China.
or China and Taiwan
Yeah,
and
yeah,
all
yeah.
that stuff. Yeah.
That's just Steam is 75,000. And funny fact, the next month there was 75,484, so 150 higher peak somehow. Second month into the league. Well, every other league was just absolutely not doing too hot at all.
Didn't they even say that Incursion was one of the leagues where they had troubles with retention?
Yeah,
did.
it's because
Because it
Bestiary
was-
was their like best league for retention, so I think they're also comparing it to that as well.
It's interesting because, like, if you look at the two mechanics, Incursion was far more well received, but it was also far easier to solve. Like, Bestiary was much more of a dense puzzle. I don't know, like that probably drove away a large number of players, but maybe it also accounts for the retention. I really don't know what accounts for Bestiary's retention, honestly.
It also
Yeah,
progression.
did it
all
also
about
have the
player
Ascendancy
progression, I
rework
think.
of that league as well?
Huh. Wait a minute.
Yes, that may.
This was the 75,364. That wasn't the league start. The 150 higher was the league start. It was the last month of whatever league before.
Bestiary, yeah.
Bestiary.
Bestiary
Huh.
was the highest retention they've ever had.
Yeah, was there because it started at 95 peak, then it went down to 42 the next month,
We
and
had
then
a
the next month was
flashback.
75.
There was a flashback in the last month of that.
Holy shit! But that's so big. That's
Yeah.
almost
It-
as much
it
as many
might
players as
be.
the start.
It might be the pendulum swinging back because a lot of people didn't really like Bestiary at all, so they didn't play a lot of the league. And then when the flashback started, they really wanted to play Path of Exile, so they came back for the flashback.
Yeah, I mean it's like an event also, so I don't know how much the peak indicates of how the entire
This is
like
true.
average players went, but that's it's pretty crazy.
I think this kind of goes to show, though, like how things are received, like how we perceive things at the start of a league and how it actually plays out. There's a lot of oh, this is not exactly what I wanted, like at the face of it, right? It doesn't give me everything I want, but it gives me like this elaborate puzzle that I have to fix. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, it's challenging. Oh no. Ooh.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's
no,
not,
absolutely.
but in reality, we do want to challenge. We do want to have something that we can build and work towards, and actually not feel like it's all about completing something. I think in PoE, once people have completed a character, they get bored. The faster you let them complete things, the faster they get bored. It's pretty simple, I think.
Yeah. And speaking of completing things and getting bored, that's a pretty good segue. We've been doing a lot of Diablo recently on this podcast. I've been playing Diablo 3 on console with my girlfriend. Raiz has been playing Path of Diablo. Nugi's been doing Median XL. And Octavian's been playing Path of XL, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so we're clear, Path of Diablo and Median XL are Diablo 2 mods.
Yeah. Very briefly, to kind of talk Diablo, I'll let Nugi go. Median XL, go on, sell it to the people in the chat.
Median XL is the birthplace of trigger mechanics and clear speed and AoE, with crazy projectiles and flashy things all over the place, and very interesting, very in-depth, unique design, with very, very punishing bosses and tons of endgame content. There you go. That's Median XL.
Go on, sell Path of Diablo. Go on.
Path of Diablo is like the vanilla Diablo 2 experience, Lord of the Destruction, obviously, not just Diablo 2. And it's particularly focused on balance in the game. It's also got a ton of additions from Path of Exile, like for instance, loot filters, a mapping system, all of this again in Diablo 2. There's like corruption orbs, and generally, like I mentioned before, a lot of balance changes to skills. So it's not just if you want to play at the high level, it's not just running around with a Hammerdin and a Sork. You actually can genuinely play other classes and a lot of different builds. And it's just very cool with a ton of quality of life. Also, there's a charm inventory, so you don't have your inventory cluttered. There's an entire separate section for that, so you can actually pick things up if you're a Diablo 2 fan, which normally wouldn't happen. Because anytime you wanted to pick something up, you were technically reducing the power of your character, or you were actually just making your character weaker. So yeah, it's just really cool. It's also a little bit clear speedy in comparison, but not nearly as much as Median, that I feel is just a completely different game than Diablo 2. Other than looking somewhat similar at times. I don't know, the character models are similar.
I mean, it's built on the same engine, like one could say, the same client, right? Like you have FPS games that are built on essentially the same engine, but they're two different games. The same thing could be said about.
Yeah, it's like Warcraft 3 and Dota, for instance.
Yeah, you could say that.
And then Diablo 3, you guys probably never heard of or played of it, is actually, I'm going to go out on a limb here, is actually really fun on PlayStation. I've never played an ARPG on a console before, and it was, when it first came out, I was kind of interested, but I didn't have a console then. But I have a PlayStation. Grill got herself one for Christmas, and she bought herself Diablo then on sale, and she was like loving it, and she's like, yo, can we play Path of Exile together when that comes out? And I'm like, yeah, sure, because I've wanted to play it for ages. And they've delayed Path of Exile on PlayStation till 3.6. I don't know what the problem is, but they keep delaying it. So I was like, you know what, I'll be the good boyfriend. I paid £53. That's how much
What?
Diablo costs on PlayStation. 53
That's like 60
pounds.
euro or something,
It's
right?
a lot. It's a lot. And that was Diablo, Reaper of Souls, and the Necromancer. On the PlayStation Store, you can't even buy, like, Diablo without Reaper of Souls and stuff bundled. It really hurt paying that much, but I was like, it's whatever.
It's like $80, guys.
It's like, it was a lot.
insane.
Like, it was really feels bad. And when she
That's
bought
like
it,
2 MTXs in PoE.
that's
Holy
like
shit.
nearly a full armor set, guys.
You could afford a shield for that.
I know, right? But the thing which really sucks about it is she bought it like 2 weeks ago during like the Christmas sales, and it was 20 quid. So I felt like a proper fucking idiot. But anyway, it actually plays really good on a controller. Like, I think it plays on a controller much smoother than it does on keyboard and mouse. And I'm actually really excited now to try out PoE when that comes out. There's
Have you tried it on Xbox?
I don't have an Xbox One, and
Okay.
I would definitely never buy an Xbox One to play PoE on it. The only
Have any of us tried it?
Never tried it.
No.
Did any of you guys ever
I
try
wanna try
Diablo
it.
on console though?
No.
Yeah, I've played a bit of Diablo 3 on console.
What did you think of it?
I mean, the complaints I've had with Diablo have never been how it plays. Like, it's very smooth. Blizzard polishes their games to a shine for sure. It felt fun. It's just when that, visceral feeling of fun wore off, there wasn't much beyond that.
Can you play it for a week is the question. Because that's the thing that about Diablo 3 for me. Whenever a Diablo 3 ladder resets, dude, that's just a lot of fun for like 20 hours.
Yeah.
And then I never want to look at it again. And I hate it. And then maybe I'll try it again 3 months later. Currently, I haven't played it for like a year, and I don't really miss it. But I know that whenever a season resets, those 20 hours, a lot of fun. But there's just no depth past that, unfortunately.
It's just, if you go in now, you will know exactly. You look at, okay, I need that set, and then you know exactly, okay, I need to go through that and that. I'll have my set, and then nothing will change for the next
6 months to a year, yeah.
Until the next season.
It was really painful.
Where
though.
nothing changes either. By the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, maybe like a few numbers.
The thing which was really painful about it though, so this was like Grill's first ever ARPG. She'd never really done it before. And she was like, it's really fun though, like what's wrong with it? And I was trying to explain to her just that, but without like putting her off it. I'm like, no, it's a really fun game. It's just, there's like nothing to it. But we should keep playing. It's fun to play together, but like, it's gonna stop running. Like, it was really difficult because he was having a lot of fun with it. But
Yeah, but that's the thing with like even older games, right? Whenever
Yeah.
you would say like there's 30 hours of playtime in this game, people would be like, wow, 30 hours? That's really good. That's worth it. And then like 60 hours, it was kind of like the Nintendo, like Nintendo and all this stuff, right? Like where they were promoting it based off of what was it? Not bits, the other thing, whatever, the 64 and all that. It's kind of like that at a certain point with game hours where it was like 30, this game must be really good. 60, wow, it's twice as good. 90, that's crazy. And we got to a point with like, especially as PoE players, where it's like, I've got 15,000 hours in this game. This 20 hours is like nothing.
Yeah.
So it really messes with your head. But I think a couple of years ago, I would be extremely satisfied with 20 hours of so much fun.
Yeah.
Damn. So I can totally understand how she just doesn't see how it's a problem. Eventually, if she keeps playing it, I think she'll get there. But yeah.
But anyway. Oh, and one final thing before I drop it. One thing that I discovered very horribly. There's a massive problem on consoles in Season with people like modifying items and duping items and stuff. So they've disabled all trade in Seasons. So you can only trade items in like standard basically. And it was very painful because I was like, oh, these boots would be really good for you because we were playing Season characters. Let me give them. And we had this like 20-minute argument like, dude, they're right there. Pick them up. It's like, I can't see them. I Google it. It's like, oh, we can't actually trade. They disabled that, by the way.
I really didn't think they'd be able to limit trade even further in Diablo 3.
Yeah. So it's complete SSF.
So how do you like playing but you're playing together still?
Yeah, so we're playing together. And that's kind of fun.
Complete SSF.
You're basically just being able to watch the other person play next to you. There's no actual
that is
impact.
the
Well,
one. That's the
I mean, I
one
guess
weird
you're killing the
thing
same
with
enemies.
ARPGs in general. Is it's kind of like you can't play too good of a build because if your build works too well, then whoever you're playing with is just like following you. So there's been this kind of thing where I've purposely stilted my character a little bit, so it's kind of like we both get to do things. So we're both playing Necros because I thought we'd be able to trade, and I'm basically doing like Bone Nova. So it's like I teleport Bone Nova, but sometimes I don't use my like movement skill on cooldown, so I don't instantly get into the pack. So she has a little bit of time, so she can hit the pack a little bit.
You're admitting this on stream as well.
Yeah,
That's
it's
a
fine. It's
mistake.
fine. It's fine. But
Phone starts ringing.
yeah. What was that, bitch? We're still only leveling though, so it's like super trash. But she did pretty good. She got like a level 70 Demon Hunter in standard in like 2 days or something, which is like for a new player, it's pretty decent. But anyway, so that's a game. Getting back to topic-y kind of things though. Are there still any elements, though, from stuff like Nugiyen XL and from Path of Diablo that you do wish that we could bring more over into PoE?
Yes.
You go first, Nugi.
But now I have to like think of which one it is. It's I mean, this
The thing about POD is that it really is. I feel like it brings out the best in Path of Exile, like into Diablo 2, and Diablo 2 is just at this point like a very inferior version of Path of Exile. There's obviously a lot of nostalgia that plays into playing Diablo 2, and it's still a fantastic game. PoE is just freaking taking it so far. The bar is so high. It's very tricky in that way. I mean, I would love for the game to be a little bit slower, but Diablo 2 is kind of the same way, where you start off really slow. I would say that PoE is significantly faster, even though too many it's very slow at the start. And then once you get going, you're freaking really going. So yeah, kind of tricky in that way.
In Median, they have something called, so the way they tier their uniques is a lot different than in PoE. In PoE, there is like this idea that's always been that everything can be found anywhere, and I've always hated that. I love PoE as a game, but there are things where I just feel like it feels just really not right for an ARPG. So you will find like your Calm's Heart in a T1 map. You will find all the very best items with magic find in the lowest level of map. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I'll try this to explain how Median works. So in Median, everything is based off area levels, right? It's the same thing as like map levels, right? You could say that. But so for certain pieces of gear to drop, they have to be dropped in certain area levels, and the boss can then sometimes also drop these higher level uniques. So you have like sacred uniques that are tiered with sacred, and then we call them SSUs, and then triple SUs, which is just it's just the higher tier. Like, so there are 3 tiers. And then there's like 3 tiers of levels in Median XL as well. And then on the lowest level, you find the tier 1s. On the second, you find the tier 2s. And the third, you find the tier 3s. And these are very powerful uniques. And the uniques are something that you chase after. And there's so many of them. There's an abundance of the highest tier uniques that are all very powerful, but they're super rare. Right? They cannot be obtained by div cards or something. No, it's like you find it and then it's like, yeah. And you'll find these, like you will farm the high level areas and you will be happy with it because there is the chance that in these highest level of areas that this specific thing drops. And it bothers me in PoE that I'll run Guardian maps and I know that the loot is exactly the same. And then the Guardians themselves, which are now a pushover, because in PoE they're a pushover, because we have so much damage that we trivialize the length of the fight so it never feels impactful at a certain stage.
Yep.
And then because they're so accessible now, they drop so much of the same thing and we just look at it and forget about it. So I think getting back some of that chase unique design that we used to have in PoE, and then also make it better at the higher tiers. So like you would chase them at different tiers, right? That is something I would like to see. That's why I love coming back to Median.
Having not played Median or Path of Diablo at all, is there a system in place that would even come close to comparing to some of the power level of crafting that we have in Path of Exile? You know, something
Yes.
like fossils or essences that gives you a deterministic craft to
So
sub in power for those uniques.
Median is actually the game. I think that I can't remember any other game that in any other RPG that introduced crafting in the same, because Median has shrine crafting, which is that's essences essentially. They've had that since the beginning. Then they have something called MOs, which is this is actually a very cool concept. So an MO or Mystic Orb will increase the required level of an item and then apply a stat to it. So you can have very low tier items that can be very powerful because you keep increasing its level, but you also have to be higher level to wield it, but then you can keep increasing it that way. It's really cool. Then you have then you can find unique mystic orbs, which are very rare and are even more powerful ways to upgrade it. So you can hold out on some of your better items and then apply that to them.
Would you say?
Can you trade?
Go ahead, Raiz.
Just real quick. Okay.
You can. I mean,
Would you say,
which is tainted by forum gold and all that other crap that's always been around it. Like, trading is always a problem, and I do think that the moment you apply, and this is the thing I think is a very problematic, and this also in PoE. The moment you apply the player base, the size of the player base of a game like PoE, to something like Median, and then trading becomes prevalent, then all this layered experience where you go through and for all these tiers become watered down because you just buy them from the people who run it up top, and it just sifts down and everyone has it.
Very briefly to interrupt on that, so that was something that we experienced really well in my private league, because we league started private league this time round. Softcore trade, we had, I think even now we only have something like 150 people. We kind of peaked at like an average 50 players. Having a 30 to 50 man of that, maybe 10 dedicated, like grinding, beautiful economy. The second it started to trickle down, though, to like less than 5 people, everything became mature. And then recently I left my private league into hardcore trade because it was like beautiful for the first month. Then we had like a week or two of like struggling, and then it's shit, I can't buy alterations off anyone, I can't buy this off anyone, I'm just playing SSF at this point. And that's the problem that you have with nearly any ARPG, and it's a lot of softcore trade players complain about the fact that with each league the economy is getting larger, and it's kind of like becoming more and more of a problem. So I don't know how they can ever fix that, really.
See, that was the thing that I really appreciate about Ziz's private league. It was the no stash league. It was because even if you were to get to a point where you can get things that very heavily benefit people, like bases, like an item level 86 base, that's a really freaking big deal for a player who's looking to craft a chess piece or whatever, a shield, whatever you want to call it out as. But because you didn't have any space, even though people could trade, you would never keep it because there were other things that would be more valuable for you in particular. And that kind of created this like really cool economy where you could totally trade for big things that you needed, and you could totally get your build up and running. And if you had the money, you could make it work. But at the same time, it wouldn't really trivialize the content for like the lower level players that are just trying to get there. It would still be equally as difficult for them as it would be for the guy getting there in the first place. And I thought that was really, really, really cool for an economy, because you just kept it stable.
Since we're talking about stability of economies, one of, I think, the most brilliant things that's been added to Path of Exile that I think is a great way of helping to deal with this, and I'd like to see more ideas go in that direction, is actually something that's very core to the base game, and that's the Vol Orb. Like when you corrupt a Kamm's Heart, there's a chance you're just deleting it. When you corrupt a Wind Whipper, there's a chance it's just gone. And that also is something you opt into. And unlike, props to you for playing the No Stash League. Unlike a No Stash League, I don't think it detracts from the enjoyment of the general player base as well,
Yeah.
because most people wouldn't want to play that game. So if we can have, you know, more sources of syncs that are interesting rather than just being hampering, I think that would be, you know, phenomenal for helping keep the economy fresh. Like, there's sort of two ways you can approach it when you're trying to. A sink is a great analogy, because if you look at the flow of items in the economy as a faucet pouring water into some sort of container, you either need to, you know, empty that container a bit by adding a sink, or stop the faucet somewhat, which would be restricting drops to higher tiers. I think it's legitimate to approach it from both ways, but a sink, particularly one that players opt into, is often, I think, more fun for the player base.
Yeah, but like it's so hard to draw that line, honestly. Because it's like, for instance, one of the big upsides of Diablo 2 is that people aren't as focused on, or of Path of Diablo, people aren't as focused on just like doing everything, because there's other aspects of the game that aren't end game that are still enjoyable. While in PoE, I feel like to the majority of the player base, the goal, if they have enough time, is always kill Uber Elder or something like that. And so they're trying to get to that point. And so what I'm trying to say is that with POD, you can also totally do that. You can make a character that's just going to face roll the hardest content in the game, but the average character won't get there that easily. And so it creates this mechanic where very slight changes to your character are incredibly worthwhile because they're super duper rare, to the point where something that will literally increase the strength of your character by like 0.1% is very sought after. And people will put in the extra effort to get like a Shaco with, 1% higher defense or something like that. And that paired up with the Vol Orbs, which can create sockets on items, makes a pretty big difference. Unfortunately, it also includes a lot of clear speed, because getting a really powerful item with sockets now that risks destroying it, because it is like a Path of Exile Vol Orb. It might even have a high probability of destroying the item. That creates a lot of clear speed. But then D2 also works differently, because just getting a socket on your helmet won't necessarily make your character stronger, because in Path of Exile, if you get like a 4% cast speed jewel, you're gonna feel that, right? Very slightly, sure, but you get 4, you get 4, you get 4. You've got 12 now, and 12 cast speed you can definitely feel. While in POD, you can get 12 cast speed and it's not going to do anything for you, because the game is based off of frames. There's only 25 frames, and that essentially creates breakpoints for your character for how much stuff you need. And yeah, and that way it's like a lot more interesting, because those chase items don't need to be like a super good items. They can be very small, but it just pushes you over the breakpoint, creating this like really rewarding system.
This is tangentially related. I watched a really good breakdown of a talk that Travis Scott did, and he's someone who used to work on Diablo and someone who used to work on WoW, talking about loot and like how itemization and stuff works. And I feel like PoE's going a little bit in the direction he was talking about. He was kind of saying that one of the things that he really regretted about changes with like early WoW to later WoW was you went from an item which had like, not Travis Scott, his name's Travis anyway. It was like 2% crit chance, then like 120 crit rating, and you see this stat and you're like, what does this mean? And it's like there are some stats in PoE that you equip it and you instantly feel, like you said, cast speed. But you look at something and it's like, when you have so many like increased ramps of increased damage and multipliers and this thing other, I kind of feel like the number creep when it comes to some of the things we're having in PoE now is getting a bit like unnecessary, and we're seeing it a lot with the economy. Like if we go back to like the price of exalts and stuff, I feel like the numbers are getting a bit too high, and maybe be time for GGG to try and do a number crunch. You see that in a lot of really long-running games, like WoW's always going back and bringing all the numbers down, and a big complaint
How
of
are you gonna number
Diablo
crunch
is like...
currency though?
Say that again, sorry?
How are you gonna number crunch currency?
If you reduce the drop rate of currency and then change the cost of things around it, you can fuck with it. You can never do it perfectly, but like if crafting becomes more expensive through stuff like exalts, and then the amount of chaos that drop goes down, but for example chaos map mods went down a little bit as well, then everything would kind of rebalance around it. Like uniques would be restructured around it. It would all kind of work.
Do you think it would be okay? Do you think it would be a good idea to So let's say that every cost of all the mods and everything would go down, right? Because we have the exalt, like the meta mods with the exalts, but then you would make the exalt rare, and therefore, I mean, that would seem bad to me. Where I feel like it's more like the power of meta mods that's driving up the exalt price. So that's the issue that we're currently having with the currencies. Because I don't think the currency is out of place. When you play through the normal game, the drop rate of them, that does not seem out of place at all. We have a good amount of chaos, a good amount of exalts.
I think I disagree.
You
with
do?
that.
In what
Yeah,
way?
I mean, you
Because
also
I feel like the average player doesn't see the exalted orb. And even if they see it, they don't feel like it's a big deal. But like realistically, the average player really doesn't see an exalted orb. And so you've got like an abundance of this like tiny currency. I never thought that this will be a problem because it's an ARPG. But at this point, in my opinion, in Path of Exile, there's too much shit to pick up that are just 1x1 squares. Pick up splinters, pick up chromatics, pick up jewelers, pick up chance orbs. And we get to a point where, yeah, you can pick all these things up and they should be fun to pick up, but you're going to filter them out because it's just so much little shit. And there's so much little shit that you have to pick up that isn't currency that you have to like carry around with you at all times. And like dump tabs are more and more effective and the average player uses it. I feel like maybe for the average player, that chaos orb is their exalted orb. Because even in the 85 race, it was 2 of us. We got to level 70 and we had 2 chaos orbs. I wanted to craft 4. I wanted to craft tier 3 movement speed. We didn't have it. We had 2 chaos orbs and we never used one. And yeah, that was it. So the chaos orb, if the player can treat it as an exalted orb, then yeah, the system works. But if they go and check a price, right? Like they look it up and then they realize, whoa, I have to pick up 170 of these to buy a single exalted orb. And I just found 2 after playing for 60 hours. I'm fucking never finding an exalted orb. There's no way, right? And stuff like that can be just very discouraging. So making drops more meaningful and less of like the splintery, piece of something type of stuff, I would prefer it. I don't know if it would be better for the game, but I would prefer it. And then even maps and like tokens in maps and like the things that syndicates drop that you have to pick up to unveil. At least those are big items. But imagine if they were like 1x1. Oof, it's a lot of shit to pick up, and most of it is meaningless that you have to do.
Okay, but that wasn't my point, though. Right?
Okay.
We're talking specifically between chaos and exalts, right? Where Target's like there's an inflation of the exalt number price, like the exalt price, and it's going up to this extreme amount. That's not the same thing as the things that are dropping on your screen with all the chromatics and chaos, and it's just tied into like this one thing that inflates in value, and therefore we need to counter the inflation. And
I would argue it was both though. Also, it was Travis Day was the developer earlier. Sorry about that. If you're watching, Travis.
Also, you just implement a solution where you change costs of Zana mods and crafting mods and all that sort of thing. You're sort of overlooking the actual inherent use of the currency, which the currency drop rates are balanced around to some degree as well. Like it's not as common anymore with other crafting methods we have, but people will chaos spam things, and if you lower transmute rates, then while leveling, it's going to be hell to get that transmute you need to buy the white onyx amulet from the vendor or whatever.
Well, that's my point. Like I don't want to take away because then you can't use them because they're not there when you need them. And I would like to use the exalt
but like
for the purpose of exalt because it's an interesting thing to do, to invest into we try and like go for this big random occurrence, and sometimes it happens.
Very briefly, just to fully explain, because I didn't explain what I meant fully.
Okay.
I agree when you're just playing the game, like Raiz said, when you're just leveling, the drop rate is fine. We've had massive currency drop inflation through shit like Delve. and shit like
Yes.
Alva, which is part of the core
Yeah, that's
game.
true.
So that's what I was talking about. So like there's been a massive increase in the amount of raw currency dropping from all of these leagues, and we keep getting more and more leagues added, and each league seems to drop more currency than the one before it. So I think at some point they need to look at the drop rate of the leagues that are going into core and bringing it down so it matches out with the core experience. Because as Raiz said, if you're someone who's just leveling a new character and you're like, okay, I'm getting this many raw drops an hour, and then you have someone in Harbour Bridge or Ossuary and they're like, yo, I'm just like casually getting like 300 or 400 an hour, or you've got some people doing very efficient chaos recipe. Even that, like the actual amount of items just dropping, even in terms of just rares, is whack. Like there are too many items dropping, and
I think
to me it was experimental. Like it looked like it was experimental, like what they did with Delve, and they just overshot it, where they wanted to give players something else to do other than just like, oh, just map. How do I get currency? Well, you just map, bro. Like, what's the big deal? They wanted to give them something else to do, and they just made it so that the people that are mapping now feel stupid for not just like farming out Delve or Syndicate and stuff like this. And the player that's unaware of it is happy, but like, you know, if you read Reddit, you're fucked. Mentally.
I think GGG felt like the onus was on Delve League as this new mechanic that's being pushed as an alternate endgame in a way, or at least perceived as an alternate endgame, to make it like the most rewarding thing you can be doing with your time. Like you want to click that fuel, be excited that you have it, and then go run Delve. But that just doesn't jive with being thrown into the core game, because now it has to play nice with all the other mechanics, and it really doesn't, because you have just boxes of money you can click. They fixed it somewhat by making it so you do have to actually break walls to get the boxes of money, but since fuel costs are incredibly low early, because they have to be, because you get very little fuel early, it's abusable. It's a problem that's cropped up, and it's not actually on our topic list, but if I'm allowed to go off,
go for it, dude. Go for it.
It's something that the community has been complaining about very, very much more this league than previous ones, but it's been a problem for many leagues, that there's this juxtaposition of you're either making the most money by doing the highest invested like end game content, or staying away from investing entirely and doing very early stuff very quickly, and it leaves the middle class, so to speak, just like bereft of any really truly any content that feels rewarding compared to the other stuff. And as Raiz said, if you're just alching and going on your yellow maps and not, you know, looking up strategies to make the most currency, then it's not going to be a problem. And you can kind of blame it on the player. Like, yeah, if you enjoy just alching and going on T10s, you'll make enough currency to make a build. Just do that. But it's kind of hard to say that that's the player's fault, because it's really on the dev to design a game that points you in the direction of the fun thing, and also making the fun thing rewarding. If the dev
challenging.
Yeah, if the dev leaves something in the game that is way more rewarding than everything else and isn't fun, players will still gravitate towards that and do it. They won't enjoy it, they'll get burned out and they'll leave. And like, your job as a game designer is to get players to keep playing your game and having fun. You've failed at your job. Even if you want to like shout and blame the players, telling them, God damn it, I made this fun thing over here, why aren't you doing it? Well, you have to figure out why aren't they doing it and fix that. You can't just blame them for it.
I will always go back to the exact same example, Diablo 3 chest runs. When that was the most profitable way of getting items, you would literally load into the waypoint, click the chest next to the waypoint, reload the game, and you do that for hours on end, and you'd want to kill yourself. But it was the best way of playing the game.
People still did it because people just want to win the game. But they don't necessarily want to have, well, they want to have fun while winning the game, but they're willing to win the game instead of having fun while playing the game.
That is different to me, because in Path of Exile, again, the goal isn't to create the fastest mapping character, because realistically, that's not going to accomplish anything, especially in this current stage of the game, when there's most likely, I mean, we're like 80% of the way there. There will most likely be more level 100s in this single league than the entirety of all the leagues combined prior to this. Okay?
Pure Breachstones are fine.
Pure Breachstones are fine, by the way. So, in the state of this game, it is absolutely not rewarding to map and to make a fast mapper. It just doesn't accomplish anything. And to most people, the goal is to kill those bosses. And realistically, to kill those bosses, you don't have to do something really boring day in and day out. to do it. Like you can just pick up a random Mathul build, waste 2 or 3 sets for practice, and then just kill Uber Elder, and you finish the game, and you don't have to go so crazy. But in Diablo 3, the difficulty, the mapping system was endless. Therefore, people would do this forever because there always was a point where they were like, okay, I got to do some more chests, otherwise I can't keep doing this thing. So I don't know if that's like necessarily a fair comparison. However, if maps had like that scaling, then yeah. But I mean, also GGG implemented Delve for exactly that reason, I think, which didn't really get it done. The endless difficulty thing doesn't exist.
Me, apparently I've been muted for like 20 years.
Nice.
Oh man.
Well played, Tarke. So Delve, the problem that you have with Delve is that there's this thing where they design it so that if you're the MPs of the world, if you're whatever, and you fully min-max, you can finally test it. However, the vast majority of people can't afford the scarabs or the this or the that, and they can't infinitely sustain Delve. But you can't infinitely sustain Delve because it's way more profitable than mapping. So you're in this really weird, awkward situation where it's kind of like, yo, I want to fully min-max my build to push the endless content, but to do that, someone has to farm scarabs so I can buy the scarabs, and then to do that, I need the currency, so then I'm doing content I don't enjoy to push. It's just all haphazard.
Delve is shit, man. And then even then,
Delve
you're like,
is
why don't I
amazing,
just
but
make an
shit.
indestructible character? It's like, oh, why do all these things if I can just make an indestructible character instead? Why min-max my shit? I can do all the damage in the world and I can be indestructible. It's shit, man. It sucks.
Delve is fucking great, dude. It's just getting there sucks. And I think, okay, so we were talking about the, Octavian said where you had the end game versus the easy content versus the hard content, and how those are the most efficient ways of getting anything. There's nothing in between. I think that goes back to what I was talking about with Median, with the tiered system. The thing, there isn't tiers in PoE. It's all about min-maxing amount of drops per hour. Like imagine if Delve was tiered, like actually properly tiered. At like up to Delve 50 or 100, you could only find the very basic fossils. 100 to 200, then you start it. Then it's the only way to even to have them drop, right? Now you can find like the next tier, and then at 200 to 300, it goes, only then can you find pristines and dens, for instance. Then there's an immediate cost applied to these as well, like for their this is the true power, because then that cost is in either through difficulty or through the sulfite will immediately be applied that way, and you can't just infinitely farm.
I think they could make it more extreme, but it is somewhat built in that way. I think more than people realize, because as you get really deep, you do find like there's basically one factor or two factors that increase. Like city and boss spawns go up until they cap out at 600, and so that makes things a lot more profitable. And I think bosses within cities still keep going up, but I haven't done enough to test that. And the crazy rare fossils like Hollow and Gilded, or sorry, not Gilded, Hollow and all those keep going up as well. Yeah. But like they're not enough to make it immediately worthwhile, like in the short term. And also it takes so much effort to get down to that point. Like if you get down there and you can handle it relatively easily, it is worth the time. But it takes so much time and effort to get there. You don't see those rewards right away because you have to do a large number of them, a large number of delves before over an average you find a lot of those fossils. And it's just so easy to do early delves and print money doing that instead. I think it would be really interesting if they separated them out, but they'd have to be careful with that because there's the fossils that you can find and farm early on are a tool as well for bringing the player that doesn't play the game as much, doesn't make as much money, bringing those players up to a point where they can maybe self-craft some interesting gear, bring them into the crafting system. Like I kind of like the accessibility of fossils for that reason, even though it tampers with the economy.
they could already do that before. And while you're going through your delving, you find chaos and you can craft through the bench. And there's so much power.
but
We have
that's the
so much
thing.
power already. And the thing, unlocking everything at one time is a big mistake in an ARPG. It's not good, because there's no progression in how you're like creating your items. There's no difference at the very early level to when you then go further on, and then you apply, you add extra layers as you go forward. I think that's a problem.
Before Delve was
okay. Delve,
go ahead, Raiz.
just real quick, because I just really quick want to clarify my stance, okay, about Delve. I think
Okay.
Delve is really freaking fun. I love the idea of Delve. I love what Nugi is saying, and I absolutely agree. And I love what Octavian is saying, and I absolutely agree. If the system was like literally times 10, like, because it feels like there's no progression right now. You get to like certain points, and people like Octavian can tell you, hey, yeah, it gets really rewarding, and hey, yeah, it's really worth it. But realistically, the average like player who interacts with Delve will either stick to low or get to 83, and that's where he's going to sit.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the idea of Delve, and I love how rewarding it could be, but in its current iteration, it creates more problems than solutions. So like the currency thing, it's a big problem because of Delve, the same way Magic Find was, and people being forced into certain playstyles that they don't enjoy, because it is the best thing to do. And if you want to be the best, you're going to have to do it. And so that's a really big problem. Then like level 83 content is absolutely trivialized, right? Because you can just do flare running. So if you want experience out of high level maps, why not just do it for free with flare running? You can just throw a flare and kill level 83 mobs. I mean, there's so many players that get to level 100 like that. Not necessarily this league, because pure breachstones are really good. So it creates so many issues, and it breaks so many other aspects of the game. And these aren't the only ones. There's like a lot more examples. But at the same time, it's so fun. But then if you start implementing like that, it's spikes, right? It starts scaling a lot faster. Won't some of these issues be fixed? But then other ones are going to be emphasized. Don't you need to like increase the item, level of mobs so that you start getting more XP? Then what about mapping? Like, the idea is great, but oh man, it just breaks so much. I feel like they're gonna have a really hard time to fix it, and then eventually it's just going to get to a point. Even if you do fix it, it's temporary, because then I don't know, power creep increases, the game shifts, maybe more players play this, maybe more players play that, maybe map meta shifts, and now outdoor maps are a lot better. So the indoor maps that were previously better in Delve aren't going to be as good, and so now nobody wants to Delve, so now they have to fix Delve again. It's just like, fuck, man, it impacts the game in such a heavy way. I don't know if people necessarily realize it, but at the same time, I get it, you don't want to take it away because it's so fun. Like,
No.
it's a real
I think there's like, we can't take it away because it's so fun, but how is it fun when you feel like you're forced to do something? That is not fun. Right?
I mean, it's still fun, though.
But it's the same. But it's the same thing, right? But you would call it fun to open a box 100 times in a row to get like your best item because it's so good, right? It's the same.
I don't care if it's opening a box 100 times in a row, as long as opening the box feels rewarding every time. And Delve does that really well. I think it really does. Even if you're doing the shitty thing like flare running and all this stuff that really is lame and doesn't work and shouldn't be there, it's still fun, man. At least to me, I don't know.
I like delving in itself, like just playing through, going through the nose and digging down and all that, and then the big explosion at the end. That's really fun. What I don't feel is very fun is the 50th time in a row I go into a city. It's like, oh, another city. Hey, now I can like buy another tab to put my maps in. I mean, that is just not fun. I'm like, okay, I guess more. Yay. The first time it was fun. One time. You know what I want to be fun? I want it to be fun to go through the delving and then seeing the little harbinger icon with them, or the sexton icon. Oh, there it is. There's my maps. Right? Rather than the city is giving so many things, I feel is completely like, I don't know who came up with that idea. Oh, let's just make every city node drop like 1 billion things. Now you go into the city for the option of finding like a lich. you dig through all the nodes to find the little map node over here. Right, so you're searching for the things rather than just going for a city that has everything. I feel like the cities are like the biggest problem with Delve, like by and large.
And cities are 0 to 100 also like very hard. Like nothing deals damage to you until it one shots you, and it's like damn. That I don't know. To me, that's pretty lame.
To say a couple of things, because chat always says this, there will always be a most efficient thing. We agree there will always be a most efficient thing.
Yeah, of
This
course.
is also a very massive system that's only been in the game for, what, like 4 months now. It's going to take them like 3 leagues to get it right. Using the example of Atlas, I only just started to like Atlas like now, and that's like a year and a half later, so I wouldn't be surprised if it took me like a year to be like, okay, Delve is in the state that I'm kind of happy with. But I think a lot of this ends up going back to kind of what Nugi was saying with the thing that you really liked about Median was you get certain things from certain areas, and this all kind of boils back into it, the fact that you unlock everything at once. And there's a viewer you guys might know called Ninant, Ninnant, really good player. He made a really interesting Reddit thread like 2 leagues back or something, and he disliked the fact that nearly all items in this game you can equip at like 72.
Fuck,
kind-
no, don't say this shit because
No,
everything you say is just like all I have in my head is right now is David Brevik was right all along. That fucker, he knew soulbound items are the solution to everything. And I don't want to think that.
No, you don't need to go the soulbound, but like just the idea of this thing where pretend that levels were worth something in PoE again, because right now it's like you get to 95 in no time at all, but pretend that levels were like a thing again. The idea that it's like, oh, at 72, you can equip your perfect, you know, eye level 86, perfectly crafted elder chest, this, that, and the other. You've got everything completely min-max at 72. And then, as long as you can afford it, there's no real need to get any higher. Yes, there are some items you can only equip at 80, and that's it.
or 90.
You know?
They
See, that's what I like
briefly-
about D2 also. In D2, that's absolutely the case. You get to like level 80, which is like level 90 in PoE, and then you equip an item. It feels pretty cool, but it feels
Are
really
there
like
items that high requirement in D2, just regular?
yeah. I think Annihilus is 80. I think torches are level 80.
Oh, okay. So okay,
Even like
giant.
Shakos are like 75. I mean, those are like
Yeah.
huge items. So pretty high.
Whereas the highest item in
Do-
PoE is like, the one that stands out to me is Stormfire. You have to be 80 because you need the Opal ring. Like, that's
Do
really
we,
the only unique in PoE. I'm like, oh, I need to get this level. Sorry, go on.
Do we have any content in the game excluding deep delves? Because with the Scarab system as it currently stands, it's very like you have to grind a ton to even get there in the first place. That would require you to have an extra stepping stone in gear as it currently stands, though. Like we just had a Ty, to his credit, played it very well, but he killed Uber Elder at level 36. Like there's not content in the game right now that
Yeah,
an extra stepping stone of gear would be impactful for.
yeah, but we don't know how many
Okay,
tries that was.
his
and
True.
gear is, I can
True.
guarantee you, his gear is insane. It's like it'll.
But it was technically possible, which like that specific example I maybe shouldn't have brought up, but like it's not outlandish to say like at
No,
level 70 you could fairly
I
easily
agree with you.
do that.
I agree. That should never be possible. The fact that people do, and even with delve, I think that's the biggest problem. That it does not matter at what depth you are. Your build will deal with level 2000 depth the same way it will deal with level 4000 depth. And it's not because you won't do enough damage or things hit you too hard. It's because you're fucking indestructible and you have all the damage in the world. And like that's the entire problem of the system.
Well, they did remove a lot of the builds that are like completely immune.
Yeah,
those
I
are
don't
pretty much-
agree with that at all.
The,
Raiz.
the way
Uh,
we've had a much slower progression for topping the charts.
No,
I don't know where
it is
people are at
slower
right
for
now. It's
sure.
like 2 point something K. But the way people are progressing now is basically just kill everything off screen and don't get hit, because if you get hit, you are dead instantly.
yeah, okay, no, then that's a lot better. I like that a lot more. That's
I mean, look
yeah.
at Dan, how much effort he puts into his Howler build again this league, and that build dies at a very high depth. It does not survive. It's just
I think Delve is kind of the only content in the game that offers any real challenge to a build that would have that kind of stepping stone. Like if you put an item in the game that requires level 95 to use, you don't need to reach that to kill Guardians. You don't need to reach that to
do
kill
something
anything
like that. You need to
except for, like,
rework
deep delve.
like everything.
Yeah,
like
it's
you need to
a
rework
much more
everything around
significant
that.
change.
So, for
Yeah.
example, an item which would make sense would be, imagine if like Wind Ripper required level 95. That's the kind of item which would make sense, because it's like you're choosing it for the specific modifier, which is the MF. It's not like something like Cost Breeze. Cost Breeze is a cool item because it enables a build. Whether a lot of people say, oh, I hate how I have to be this level for my build works, build defining items should be accessible fairly low. But items which give you this like insane oomph, like, oh, you equip this item and you just like move like 30% faster, or you get like crazy MF, stuff like that should be a much higher level. And all of this would assume you completely rework levels. But a good example, since we've touched on this a few times, on like you reach a goal and then it's like I have nothing left to do. So this league, I was like, I want to play loads of Corsica and I want to play loads of Trickster. So I played loads of Trickster, I played loads of Corsica. I was like, I want to get Uber Elder down. And I killed it on my first try, and it was really messy and I died a lot. And then I was like, okay, well I'll do it again deathless. And then I got it and I was like, cool. What else can I do to challenge this character? Delve. Right, well I can't actually get into Delve because I was in, at that point, a dead private league, so SSF. So it was like, do I want to spend weeks grinding scarabs myself so that I can then eventually get my Delve to the point where I start to challenge my character again? And this is on some janky Corsica build. Corsica is good this league, but like, this is like tier C skill, you know? There's very few things really in the game other than Delve that challenge you, because shit's pretty fucking easy. It's like, Syndicate is difficult, there are these random one mobs which are difficult, but 95% of the game is really fucking piss. And anything can do anything. Let's be real.
Okay, I'll tell you why this is, and why we have arrived at this point, to why you feel that way.
Ooh,
Go for it.
Right.
big topic.
Well, it's because
Let's
there's too much damage power creep. Right, too much. We can control monsters too well. Right, we freeze everything, we slow everything, we off-screen everything, and there's not a question being put to the player about how I survive. That question was put to the player with, and this is why I really like the start of what's it called?
Betrayal?
What's the league called? What's this
Betrayal.
league called?
Betrayal.
Betrayal. Yeah. Because the Syndicate, right? The model Syndicate, they stick to you. Right? Finally, we have a monster that actually sticks to you. You know why we go down and delve the way we do? Because we off-screen everything before it touches us. The moment we get touched, we die. Why can Ty do Uber Elder? Because he can run around in circles with high movement speed, with enough damage without the question ever being asked to his character, will you survive this hit? Because you just never get hit. In an ARPG where everything gets so like, where everything gets into like a very binary way of playing, where it's like you just do damage, and that's all that there is asked of a character and a build. It gets very it gets boring, and there's only one way of playing at that point. I think Shaper started to be. I saw when Shaper started to be like phased like within a few seconds, that was a big problem. Because you just run around, right? The balls are too slow. There's if the fight never ramps up, the whole point of Shaper to being hard is that eventually you get two of them and there's balls everywhere and you start having to dodge and weave. Sure, I think it's fine that a character in a game like this can to a point trivialize it. I don't think you should never be at least somewhat afraid at the highest tiers of content. But at least you get two, so you can just tank a few things, and you do a lot of damage, you go through the stages fast, and it's nice. You can feel a big impact. But yeah, I think just the Uber Elder level 36 kind of showcased too much how much power you can put into a character in just like damage and mobility without the question being asked of the character, how can you survive this thing? So
I think
ability has
mobility is
just been.
fine. But the damage, yeah. Like, I think it should never happen. Like, how is that? That's so insane.
Bestials.
Yeah.
There
You
you
can
go, that's
also
fine.
you can get a level 21 Wrath out of a ring and equip that at level 30, level 36.
Yeah. So like the actual
sort of thing.
power in the character is actually there. Like all the tools that are in game, like are normally just available in game. I don't think the ring is a big problem. It's like a leveling tool as well.
A lot of it's
he has
just
700
about
HP and he never gets hit by anything.
it's just about interacting with mobs, you know. And we've seen this with Path of Exile for a long time. We didn't interact with mobs at all, and then they're slowly. And I had this exact conversation yesterday on stream. GGG is 100% aware of this problem because they're slowly, every single patch, they're adding things that you have to interact with. They're just doing it really fucking slowly. In a year's time, I imagine we will be where we want to be. The problem is they're trying to do it so slowly that they don't freak out the player base, that it's really fucking painful getting there. We saw this with movement skills. We're going to slightly nerf Queen of the Forest like 5 times. We're going to nerf Shield Charge. We're going to nerf this. We're going to buff Flame Dash slightly. Like, they're evening it out. Chris has said multiple times on this very podcast as well, he doesn't like the current state of movement skills. Jonathan said that he doesn't like the current speed and everything of characters like 2-3 episodes ago. GGG don't like the current state of the extremes. They're slowly reining it in through stuff like Syndicate, but it's going to take like a year to get there.
The problem is it's like a never-ending journey, right? Every time they want to implement something cool, it's like, hey, how will year? And it just got into a point where they have so much crazy shit that no matter what, everything's just going to get really ridiculous and really powerful. I mean, the reason, like, Headhunter has been in the game for a long time, and it wasn't like the super dominant item for very long. It's because all these different things came together in such a way that has made it such a dominant item. That's always been kind of the problem with on-kill effects and flask management and all this sort of stuff.
Well, they all feed into one another. Like,
Yeah,
the more
exactly.
powerful flasks become, the more easy it is to keep them up because you can get the next pack. The more density of content you can have, it's a compounding problem, which is why just like messing with one of the sliders isn't going to necessarily solve it.
So would you guys, for instance, with Delve, so if we were to take a system like Delve, let's just say specifically, okay, just so we don't theorize too much. Delve at like the deepest of levels, the guy who's the deepest in Delve right now, do you think he feels rewarded in terms of like not difficulty but drops and all this sort of stuff? Does it feel rewarding? Is there a reason to do it other than challenging yourself? And should there be?
I mean,
so
if you're
I
going for
think
like Delve 2000, you're not doing it for the loot, you're doing it for the bragging rights.
He has the bragging rights. This is why you do it.
Should it be rewarding though?
I mean, there should be something you can get there. I think there should be a
handle it, it
chance
probably
of.
is.
I don't think it should be the most reward. Like in terms of like just raw currency drops and all that, I don't think it needs to be at all. Right? The people who do this for like the very deepest delves, they do it for the challenge and for the bragging rights, right? It's like the same thing. Why do you go for 100? Because I want to show everyone I'm 100. I want to be on the top of the ladder. I want to enter a lobby. I want to stand still in the town and people hover over. Oh, that guy's fucking level 100. Wow, that's cool. That's how people have played these games since the dawn of ARPGs. It's always been like that. It always will be. So should it be the most rewarding? I mean, I think there should be a chance of finding the best stuff in the game, right? Outside of boss drops at a certain level. I think you should be in a position where you can get something that's better than someone who's at 100, 200, maybe 300. But beyond that, I don't think so.
The highest tier delve should, to an extent, be the most profitable way to delve. Within delve itself, so it's like, if 2k is bragging rights, I feel like 800 or 1000 should be infinitely more profitable than delve 50.
Well, you can have
Infinitely, though?
Maybe not infinitely, but you know what I mean, though, right? Like, so for example, with Octavian, he's pushed his delve to, what, you got over 1,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's like, for you now, you're getting so many cities. you're probably, if you sustain that, would you crush the amount of currency someone would get if they were just spamming like Del 50? Or would it be about
No.
the same?
No. So I think at like 2,000 or 1,500, I've not actually gotten there myself. The furthest I've gotten is like 1,100 or so last league. But I think the deeper you go, the better it is to be deep, because the frequency of map, currency, and fossil nodes keeps going up, and the fuel cost, like the fuel cost doesn't. Your fuel cost stops going up around 900 or so, 890, I think it is. So they're paying the same for better results, but you have to be so extremely deep to be competitive with depth 50 that it isn't worth the time for someone who doesn't also have the goal of, wanting to push down that deep for bragging rights. Once you're there, then it's worth the time spent delving there. Like if you want to go horizontally, it's worth the time spent delving at like 1,200. But the actual act of getting there takes so long that for someone who just wants to make money quickly out of delve, it makes a lot more sense to delve at like 50.
See, but what's the difference then between this and like a mapping system that would work the same way? Like, wouldn't we be stuck in the same exact position?
A mapping system feeds into it, or at least the mapping system that we have now. When you're running a T16, you can drop a T16. When you're running a delve, you don't get the resources to then run another delve.
But you get a T16.
Yeah, which then could theoretically have fuel, but it's much more removed.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm saying is that would like an endless system for mapping truly benefit the game, or will this like just power creep eternally, and eventually the game will be like, way faster than what it is even now? Will there ever be a point where GGG, you guys think, will consider a system like in Diablo 3 where you could scale content infinitely while also kind of being rewarded? I mean, it would be rewarding, I think. If maps would scale the same way they scale now,
I think they could only do that if they fundamentally reworked how experience works in this game. Because I think Nugi touched on something, and it's one thing that I've noticed a lot now. You very rarely see someone's character and go, holy shit, he's that guy. Because back in old school PoE, you'd be in town and you saw someone was level 90. You're like, dude, that took you how many months to get to level 90? The fuck, even like someone's like, oh, I'm 85. You're like, that's a pretty big deal. This guy's 85. Like that must be a pretty sick build, right? But you can't inspect people's gear in game. You have to go to a third-party website. So when you just in the brief 10 seconds that you're in town and you see another character, the only thing you can be is like, dude, that guy is a sick credit card. There's never that moment of I want to be that guy. I go back to, I have a rant that transmog is the worst thing that ever happened to World of Warcraft. When you played WoW and you saw the guy with that mount and you didn't have a mount, you're like, that guy, I want to be him. When you saw the guy who had the raid shoulders, you were like, I want to fucking be that dude. Everyone in fucking PoE is some dipshit who spent like $600 on some bullshit MTX, and you can do everything at like level 70. Fuck it.
Yeah, but that's like the Kangen argument, like when we're talking about WoW too, because you can be like you can fucking drag it down to like where Kangen said that back in vanilla the game was the hardest, only 17 guilds.
No, it wasn't the hardest at all.
Completed the thing. Like, no, what I'm saying is that if the game has evolved in this direction, right? Like clearly there's going to be more than 17 guilds, even though there's less players, there's going to be more 17 guilds that are going to do it. Therefore, like all these other people are going to have access to all this gear, and now it won't be nearly as cool either. So like, does the transmog really make a difference? Like, I don't know.
We could have something similar to like it. Basically, what you're asking for is something similar to what I think. I didn't play it much, but RuneScape had that system where if you leveled a skill to max, you could then like use a fancy special taunt.
You got the cape and shit.
Yes. Yeah. Specific to having that skill at max.
You
could have trophy things like that.
I want to see someone and be like, dude, I want to be you. I want to be that guy. Because there's going back to examples like, oh, I killed the Uber Elder Deathless on my Corsair character. I guess I'm done now. Like there was nothing left for me to do.
It doesn't work as well in Path though, because Path of Exile is 99% a solo game for most players. Like especially if you're maybe that's an overestimation. Maybe 90%, 95%. You're sitting in your hideout. You're not in town that often. You're not like in a game like RuneScape or World of Warcraft where you're wandering through an overworld and you're going to see other players
Are
regularly.
you ready for me to completely crush your argument?
Go ahead.
Then why do people buy MTX?
I mean, I don't want my Templar to look like he's wandering about in his bathrobe
but that's the
half
thing,
the time
right?
when I'm
It's
that's for my benefit.
Exactly. So a badass as fuck cape that you got for being the best at this thing that
That's
looks
true.
sick. You did it because you're like, I'm that fucking guy with the
I'm
cape.
in favor of trophies.
Yeah.
I don't know if the argument that like we need the trophies to show off to other people is correct, but I'm in favor of trophies. One idea that I had one idea that I had that I think should be implemented for delves specifically is when a unique drops from a boss, it should say in flavor text what floor that boss kill was on. Because then you can show off, oh, I got an All's Uprising from floor 900 all. There's like 2 of those on the server.
I mean, we've done that. A lot of people don't remember this, but when Azuri initially came out, it was a really fucking hard fight, and the top 50 people in the world that did it on both softcore and hardcore were rewarded a helmet. And Waggle is, for instance, one of those people. Havoc is one of those people. And they have this MTX that they've used to this day, especially Waggle. If you're ever watching his stuff, he's got the red spiky helmet. That's that Azuri helmet, and only 100 people in the whole world have it. So they've done it in the past. I don't see why they wouldn't do something like that in the future, even if it's like for a past accomplishment. I think an MTX works for that. It works better than a piece of gear, I think, that's for sure. Because a piece of gear comes and goes and new leagues start and all this sort of stuff, and the game evolves and eventually becomes useless. But an MTX,
if we're
Waggle's got it on his head 4 years later.
If we're talking about early farming as compared to endgame farming and the lack of reward towards endgame systems, can we touch on one that I have a particular problem with this league?
Go for it.
Yes.
The Syndicate chart itself. Because holy crap, is the Mastermind not worth your time?
Okay, but that's the whole massive thing. Before we get into that very briefly, the answer is, and we've said this before, hideout trophies. There is why the fuck we don't have proper hideout trophies which aren't related to shitty challenges? Because the main time that you see other people's stuff is like you go to do a trade. When you go into someone's hideout and you're like, fuck, dude, he's got that thing, that would be cool. And people can show them
but how can you do that? What is it going to be? Uber Elders? But he can just kill it for you. Level 100? Well, fucking
you give it to the first few people who did it in the league. And you can constantly add new things. And that's the thing.
First people.
You know, and then how many you have of them as well, you know? Like, I don't know. You could have like your roasts. I had a good 40.
Like all the chicken chickaroa dinners. I've got like 22 of them or some shit. Sometimes you just line them up just to flex. Like, yo, I've got these. Have you got these?
They lag my hideouts so bad. I had to remove them. I had too many. I had to remove them.
Havoc had like 50 in his hideout while he was racing. He took the lag. But yeah.
You see, this is my point though, right? We're all sitting here flexing how many we have. Oh, but it doesn't matter. Nobody cares what you have.
I have 0.
Exactly. That's why he bitchy, because he don't have it.
No, because other people don't care. Like,
yeah, Octavian doesn't care. It's not a thing for
we
him.
care,
but
so
then
it's
we
fine.
have 3 people here. Yeah, but that's my this people do care. Yes. Kind of my point.
It's kind of like those guys that work out and think they look sick, and girls are gonna love them, but in reality, it's only other guys that care or themselves.
Like, all the gym bros.
But
like, dude, nice pecs, Amy. Yeah, nice pecs.
Yeah. Anyways,
right, Mastermind.
The Mastermind is garbage.
Yeah.
The fight's fun. It's a little cluttered and messy and hard to read the first time, but it is actually kind of fun in terms of the mechanics, which makes me even more sad because when you run the fight, you absolutely ruin your chart, and that's like I've restarted the league in hardcore like a week ago, and I'm being reminded of exactly how much time and investment goes into setting up your chart correctly, correctly in order to like get the maximum number of syndicate spawns and have the most maneuverability on the chart, which is setting up a lot of rivalries and getting the right people into the right branches and then leaving them there and blocking it. And once you run the Mastermind fight, not only does it get rid of all of the safe house members where you have them, but it also gets rid of all of your rivalries and alliances. and potentially kicks people off the chart that you want on, and potentially brings Vegan onto your chart, which is just horrible. So, like, on top of all that, the uniques, while interesting and strong, since they're available to everyone in the league and the Mastermind fight is scalable to any level, they're not exactly ever going to be all that exclusive, so they're not going to be worth that much even if they are strong. I don't see a great way of fixing it, aside from just making it so the Mastermind fight doesn't reset the chart, which feels a little bit off in terms of like lore, but screw it. I think that's probably what they would do.
Do you
then
think
have
that
the, oh, go on.
Okay, do you think that the blocking itself is a problem? I mean, honestly, it seems to me the Mastermind Giant seems like just a small atlas, right?
Yeah.
With sextants,
Yeah,
and you're just blocking, and now you've limited yourself to one way of playing, and nobody really likes that because you can't ever branch, like you can't ever evolve
Part of
out
the
from, or like
reason-
branch out from that because you're like locked into the system that you created for yourself.
Part of the reason I think why we like the Atlas and why, or I can only really speak for myself, but part of the reason why I like the Atlas and part of the reason why I like the Syndicate chart is that it encourages you to mess around with it and try and figure out a way of interacting with the system that is more efficient and superior. So I don't really want it to just be...
But do you want the old sextants back?
No, there has to be some gating
Whoa,
mechanisms.
whoa.
There has to be some gating mechanisms for sure. There has to be restrictions, but I also don't want the system to be so straightforward and to be so to have so little malleability that there's like no decision making to be made.
Yeah,
and it's
I can
just
feel
kind of like
that.
always pick the option that gives you the most intelligence, because you're always going to run the safe house when you generate it, and you don't have any way of like trying to actually interact with it. That was one of my complaints earlier on in the league in one of the first Baeclast episodes before we had really figured out great ways of interacting with the Syndicate chart, that it felt a little too obtuse and not malleable enough. And now that we've figured it out, it doesn't feel rewarding to do the Mastermind.
What the fuck
Maybe
does
I can't-
malleable mean? I like how you were looking for a word and you said malleable and everybody went yes, and I just went, what the fuck does that mean?
Imagine
Easily
like a
changeable.
clay sculpture,
Yeah.
and you could shape it into any size penis that you wanted to.
Okay. All
It's
right.
easy to configure and change.
Yeah.
The penis, I get
Malleable.
that.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
you go.
but I wouldn't compare it to sextants though, because sextants locked you into literally a single map. And
No, but that's
that
what
was
you're doing so with the whole rivalry setup system, blocking everything, leaving some, and only having like one or two that you're actually running.
yeah, but you're still engaging
And
with
you can
different
never-
masters at least.
There isn't as much
Sure.
variability between Syndicate safe houses and the Syndicate members that show up as there is between maps. Is I think the point Raiz is making.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And
Mm,
also,
yeah,
and
okay,
also, you
okay.
have to
That's
think. You have
fine,
to
that's
think
fine.
like you have to think. What is the fun of Syndicate? Is it really? Is it the rewards or is it the fights themselves? A lot of people don't seem to like the fights. They thought they were too strong and still are in many cases. So is it the fights that make it interesting? Is it the reward? Because if it's the reward, then the system's in a pretty good spot.
Can
I
I
think a
say
lot of people
something
don't like
really
it
weird?
because, yeah, go.
A big issue with Syndicate blocking is the longer that Syndicate blocking exists, the less flavorful Betrayal will be. They spent all of this money on all of this voice acting and having all of these unique characters, and the current situation is you ignore like 2/3 of all the characters and you just listen to the same characters over and over again. So the longer that Syndicate blocking is a thing, the more you'll hear the exact same voice lines over and over again, and the less flavor you actually have of the entire Syndicate as a whole. And that's a fail.
I think choices that you have on them should be much more varied than they are right now. I think there's a lot more space that you can go for there. I think that, I mean, you say like a lot of people don't like them. I mean, what does that mean? Who are these a lot of people? I mean, I know on Reddit, but
I mean, a lot of people quit.
didn't like.
Bestiary, and Bestiary had the highest retention of
I
any.
mean, yes. Again, it's like a lot of people quit. I mean, who are these a lot of people who got challenged a little bit and died maybe, and it's like, oh, I don't want to play this way. I don't know. I mean,
It was people were pretty loud. I mean, I don't necessarily get me
but
wrong.
people
I don't
are
agree
loud
with
when
it
they-
from a personal point of view, but I don't know. The general feedback, you still have to listen to feedback. The general feedback
Oh,
is
sure.
that, people just aren't having as much fun.
The thing
who's
that
not-
I
I...
didn't
who's
hear
not-
that about Delve
I'm
as much,
having-
right?
I mean, I'm hearing a lot of people having a lot of fun with the new mapping system and new masters and the syndicate members that you can use to like progress your atlas and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't.
The things that I really like about Betrayal, personally, is I like the fact that there's the constant... If you're not blocking, if you're doing the system as intended, right? Where it's kind of like, I won't do any blocking, but I might try and get this guy to here because I want to, like, exalt some jewels, or I want to get quality on my flask, I'm going to get Haku and all that kind of stuff. That system I really like because it's like you've got all of these different kind of syndicate members. Some syndicate members might be bad for your build, so maybe you want to avoid one or two. And then you kind of pick and choose where are you at that point. And obviously that was something which I experienced a lot more in an SSF environment because I couldn't just buy everything exactly as I wanted. If I wanted to have, all my flasks fully qualified, I had to do that all myself. If I wanted to get the 6 links, I had to qualify everything up manually. I think blocking probably has to go, to be honest. Because if blocking stays long term, then they either need to water down the rewards a crazy amount, or they need to make it really rare going forward in core. If you make it rare going forward in core, Mastermind becomes even worse to do. Because we need to think, how common will Syndicate be next league?
Okay,
Even-
but what if you look at it differently, just real quick? What if wouldn't the problem? I don't think the problem is blocking the same way the problem wasn't sextants in the past. The problem might be that transport and fortifications just fucking sucks. What if instead of watering it down, you would make it so that it would be more spread out and people could like if they really like mapping, then transport is the thing that they do. If they then feel a lot like maybe they want to delve, then it's a lot better to do intervention and stuff like that. Just spread it out rather than water it and keep it locked to the same way it is right
Yeah.
now.
I think they made research, and I don't know. I actually haven't been keeping like strict track, but research is definitely the rarest. I don't know if intervention is then rarer than fortification and transport, but I don't know if they made it that way in order to try and elicit some sort of response out of the player when they come across a research safe house or a research event. Like, yeah, cool, I get to do this now. But I don't really feel like the mechanic needed that. I feel like they could have had each of the branches have a 25% occurrence chance just flat across maps and had the rewards much more equalized across all 4 branches. And the mechanic then would have been much more about figuring out, like what's my strategy going to be? Where am I going to put people and how am I going to influence that? But even if we did that, and therefore, we get it perfectly balanced, perfect world, we eliminate blocking, everybody runs all 4 safe houses, when they have them because they're all, at least somewhat rewarding to do. You still don't want to do the mastermind because you still want to get more options to execute people to put them in the branches that you want them in. So therefore, you still want a ton of rivalries on your chart. And if you do the mastermind, you lose all those and you're screwed.
Mastermind itself fundamentally needs changes.
It shouldn't. Why does it reset the chart? Like, give me a reason that isn't a lore reason as to why the mastermind resets the
It's
chart.
not even a lore reason. You killed the lady and then you killed the same lady. What's the difference?
Well, she has some, I don't know. I always thought she had some sort of like backup plan where there's like a hidden magic box in a room that resurrects her from some parts or something. I don't.
It's a clone every time.
Yeah, maybe. I assumed it was because like they reformed or something, and you didn't actually properly kill her. You got to go do it again. But I can't think of a balance reason. I can't think of an actual reason, game mechanics wise, that the mastermind has to reset your chart when you beat her.
The thing to me, right? So when they first described the league, I always assumed there'd be more than one mastermind, and then it would make sense for it to reset. If there were multiple like end final boss fights, like let's say there were 3 or 4, then that would individually make all of their drops worth more because you'd be a 1 in 4, so they'd be more spread out. It would make sense for it to reset because then it's like a completely different thing rather than just, oh, the safe houses are in different orders. Yeah, I was incredibly surprised when it was like, oh, it's Katarina. Oh, it's just Katarina? Huh. Okay. But just to briefly go back to what Raiz was saying, if you were to rebalance it, and you can never achieve perfect balance. Something will always be stronger, something will always be weaker. So I think it's somewhat naive to say, oh, well, you can just rebalance it and then it'll be fine. If blocking still exists, even if you rebalance it, people will still just do whatever's best. They'll just be doing maybe fortification instead of research.
So how do you get rid of blocking? Though?
I think
like in the actual mechanics of it, how do you get rid of blocking? So what blocking is for anyone who's maybe not interacted with the system a ton, when you have a safe house that's ready to run, that safe house and members from it won't show up in your maps until you've either run it or you've run enough maps for you to lose some intelligence, which happens I think after 3 or possibly 5 instances. It's one of those. It'll decay down to 90%, and then you can build it up again. So you get a higher frequency of the ones you do want by not running the safe houses you don't want. Do you then make it so that if you have transport full and you run a map, you could get a transport event, which is then useless?
There's a few different ways you could do it. You could have it so that once you have a safe house active, you have to then run the safe house before you can then engage with the mechanic again.
Like it just stops syndicates from spawning in any content you do until that safe house has been run?
Potentially, yeah.
That's like Temple Incursion. Fuck that, dude. That felt awful. Having to stop all your shit and whatever you're doing to do this other thing that you don't necessarily want to do right now because you're focusing on other things. It felt like such a nuisance. I hated it. But
yeah. But it also depends how rare is Syndicate going to be going forward. Because if we have this, because currently we have Syndicate in every single zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's like, okay, you have Syndicate maybe once every 5 maps, but when it spawns, you get 4 events at once. Is it going to be like Alva, where when you get the Alva, you get 3? Like, in what way do we think it might potentially work? Because that changes the entire context of this conversation.
Does it really? Like, if you see it a lot less?
It would be hard for them to even implement that, though. Like, just talking about how it would work even on maps, like we've had so many bugs with just trying to fit a single Syndicate event into maps. I wouldn't want to see like a Maze of the Minotaur with 4 fortifications spawning off of it or some crap.
I would rather. I think it's time that they try something that is not random.
Yeah.
Right?
Like a guaranteed Syndicate event every map still?
No, a guaranteed Syndicate event on your Atlas.
Oh.
Yeah. And you can have it so it's like, this is the fortification map. That's maybe the research map.
I mean, you can have a rare occurrence in a map that you randomly run, that there can be a Syndicate event, right? That they pop up and that you haven't discovered, right? We discovered because it's random, right? You could make that fly, right? You say, oh, there's a fortification here. We didn't know about it. But there's always this, like, you will always have some intel at least on one spot. So you can still farm it. You have to move around a lot. You would have to have an Atlas that's actually full, because it can spawn on like every map, maybe it's within like a 5-tier radius. If you intend to, you can go like 5 to 15, or I don't know, or maybe only downwards would make sense. But
would that completely scrub it from the story then? Would it?
Okay, so a few things.
Oh, from scrubbing from the story? I mean, you would have random occurrences throughout the story, right?
A few things. We know that there will be a Alva icon on the map like there are with the other Masters. We know that because we've seen it, because they accidentally teased it when they showed off the Master rework. There was an icon that no one recognized, and it was the Alva icon that was on the Atlas. So we know that next league, their plan from the start of the league was that June, yeah. There will be a Betrayal Syndicate icon somewhere on the Atlas saying there will be a Syndicate event there. Maybe what they could kind of do is they could have it so that if you have a Syndicate event on the Atlas, that's like research or fortification. Like, there will always be, or transport. Maybe it's like research and transport are fixed spaces.
Just real quick, when you say on the Atlas, do you mean an event like the objectives, or do you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, like we see
Spider Lair always has.
No. Like how it's like you see you do your daily. It has Nico on this map. We've seen that image. There will be a master icon.
All right.
I honestly want it to be 100% chance. When you've completed one, another one pops up immediately.
Yeah.
Also, this actually helps. Kind of like it makes maps more interesting to hold, right? To pick up all the extra maps. So you always have, like, if you want to do this right, you'll have a lot more. And sometimes you just want to power through them, right? Oh, just get to you just go through the map quickly and find the dude, kill him. That becomes your speed farming method.
Yep.
And then you consume a lot of maps, and then you can decide whether or not it's worth actually running the map and stuff like that.
I don't know if you were doing this as well, right? So in SSF, I was doing this thing where I would always keep at least 2 of every map like available in case I had objectives and stuff spawn there. So I would never run all of one map type. So I'd always be like, I always have 2 left. So if I have an objective, I can go do it and I'm fine.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so what I was gonna say is, what if it was a system kind of like, so the fixed like master missions would be the stationary things like research, but maybe intervention was a random, anywhere, anytime, because that makes sense because it's like they're surprising you. It does, because I feel like having a intervention map doesn't make sense because it's like, I'm going to go to this map and know that at some point a bunch of assassins are going to try and gank me. Like, that doesn't make sense, I don't think.
Okay, maybe intervention is a random spawn, and the others you chase around.
With that specifically, though, then you could, like, I'm just trying to think of ways to break the system.
Yeah,
you could
just
like
block and
spam
shit.
strands until you get interventions randomly, and like skip the others and only generate intervention until once you get the right people into that branch. Like you run your other syndicate events.
Look at all the ways of breaking it and not having fun. You see, I think that's a problem, right? It's like,
but like I said earlier, when you design
right.
a system as a dev,
right.
you can't blame the player for trying to game the system. They're trying to win.
That's true.
You have to make the way of winning fun, because that's what the player will do. They'll try to win.
That's true.
And this is why I said, and you all shouted at me on the last Baeclast, I don't like Atlas. Because I feel like Atlas runs this thing where it is so problematic, and it's great if they can balance it, but all of these new systems, so we now have the Atlas that GG needs to maintain balance on, we have Delve that GG needs to maintain balance on, we now have Syndicate that they need to maintain balance on, and whatever the fuck the next league is going to be, they keep adding these overly complex systems, which are causing them a fucking headache. It's like, at some point you used to say, yo, can you make something that's cool, which doesn't, like, completely fuck the game? There's balance for 3 leagues.
What if it's like intervention? Maybe they make it like prophecies, kind of, where intervention is totally random, but then like in a map you meet June and she's like, "Yo, dog, you gotta be at this map at this time," and then they're transporting shit. You gotta kill them. Because like because you're saying to only have it as objectives. Like, that's just...
Yeah. Well, but I mean, no. You can have a rare occurrence, right? You can have a very rare occurrence that you would see it, but it wouldn't occur otherwise. But if you want to run Betrayal, because, okay, so a lot of people here say, oh, I don't like Immortal Syndicate at all. That's not what I enjoy at all on the thing, right? That was your words on how people perceive it. So why not make it so that if you want to engage with it, it's completely up to you as a player. It's not
like
broken.
Syndicate.
Yeah, I like it too. So I would actually chase them around. I think that could be cool. I'm just saying, like, why not just have it instead of this like 10% bullshit? I fucking hate it, especially when it comes to the soul fight crap. Oh, now I have to go get the soul fight scarabs.
Especially because
why can't I just do my thing?
Yeah,
to just get the thing and then do the thing.
With Delve, it's because Delve is far too rewarding. I think it might work with syndicates. Those syndicates. Part of the reason why Syndicate can make you so much money is because you can guaranteed spam it super fast in story zones. It might not be a problem in higher tier maps where there's a cost of entry and it's also slower.
Exactly.
But yeah, Delve is a particularly difficult one to give players like unlimited access to. They'd have to tone back the rewards massively.
Question. Do you think we'll ever go back to a league like Breach or a league like Harvey where it's like, yo, what's the league? There's shit that spawns, and maybe you get a new orb, and, like, you kill the boss.
Yes.
I mean, the answer has to be yes, but, like, realistically, when that's going to happen and, like, how that's going to be handled, that's very different.
Because I've been saying for a long time, feature creep is a thing. Like, I feel like we need maybe 2 of these crazy wackadoo leagues. Maybe 1 or 2 a year, like, big feature, fuck off, like, yo. And then we just need a couple of like chill, you know, just like yo, Breach, Arby.
I liked Essence a lot.
Yeah, that's what this league is. You don't find any Syndicate and Breachstones, dude. Just fucking run Breachstones. That's what everybody does anyway.
What do you think they're gonna do about that shit? Because obviously they can't keep it. Betrayal's going core 100%. So what the fuck do you do about Breachstone?
Kill
You make them way more challenging.
Yeah, didn't we talked this
we
over
did
the
talk
last
about
time
this
around,
last
actually.
Way more. Not even like it's trying to like every monster is an Uber in Siri kind of thing, right? It's fucking dead, bro. No, serious. I'm absolutely serious. You run a 6-man group in a rotation, one guy dies, fuck, I'm out.
Do you want to hear something really funny, Nugi? You already like this. A guy sent me someone's profile on PB Ninja, like, the fuck is this build? And it was a level 99 Trickster. He had a 6-link phase run and nothing else in his gear. He was dual-wielding XP rings, XP weapons, XP helmet, and I didn't see his character, but I can guarantee every single gem slot was probably just like enlightens or empowers. And you could tell that he was clearly just part of a 6-man rotor. They probably had like 2 people killing, then 4 people in their full XP phase run set up. Like, yo, let's level some gems, bitch.
I mean, there was that post recently of, what was it, 3 hours, 55 minutes, and 50 seconds of played time. It was more than that in like real time, but slash played time, 3 hours, 55 minutes of like from level 1 to 100. And 90% of that was pure breach stones.
I feel like that's what Nugi's talking about. That's what Untainted Paradise should be, where it's just this like, hey, this randomly spawned for me. People can like join in, but the chances that anybody's getting through that map are just like so minimal that it's like a fun risk. Like you're playing
something. You could make Untainted Paradise like pure Breachstones now, where it's just, you know, every once in a while you get this nice map where you get to get a buttload of XP for relatively free, but you can't farm that. Yeah, we could leave Untainted Paradise. I don't think that needs changes because it's very rare. You can't farm it. It's not deterministic. Pure Breachstones are Untainted Paradise, but you can pay for them, which is just
But my lore. but you get it out of Azana?
But
I think they would still have to make it so hard, like so hard. I mean, that's kind of what Untainted Paradise was when it initially released. Like, it was hard to get through that map without ripping.
It was scary, yeah.
Well, I think the best example of that is Poor Joys, because Poor Joys used to be a really reppy map, but it gave really good XP and stuff, and it was kind of like, ooh, do I want to do the risk-reward of it?
Ooh, that was really good, yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I want to mention, and it was something that you were really fucking furious about, Raiz, and shout out to one of my boys in chat who bought a supporter pack, didn't get a supporter pack, still hasn't heard back from support. Raiz, you were pissed off about GGG making leagues than like going on holiday for a month and like not supporting anything. There have been a lot of reports of people who've been like, yo, I still haven't heard back from support. Obviously this is a one-off, but how do we feel about the fact that, you know, we have like the biggest release of the year will be always around the December period, and then we're gonna have the holiday time, bye see you in a month, you know.
It's a bad structure. I mean, I don't blame them for wanting to have it there. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I don't blame the people for
they should have a holiday. People should have time with their family, 100%.
I will say, didn't they just put out a what you can search for hire? What is that called? They were hiring people for support and stuff just recently. I mean, it's not like they're not doing it. Things take time. Like maybe they just got overwhelmed with the amount of support tickets this league. It might not have been what they expected. I mean, shit happens sometimes. I think they still run one of the best supports in gaming out there. So I mean, I'm
But basically, what I'm saying is, should they just shift the release schedule? Because I think people should get like a month off for December. I think it's completely realistic. But should they then shift the release schedule so it's not like, yo, we're gonna have our biggest league of the year be at the same time we all fuck off?
Do that. But it's kind of what I do, right? It's kind of what I do every year. Like the best time to stream is always December. If we're talking money, if we're talking all this stuff, exposure, it's December. Everybody's just watching streams. It's the best. Everybody's feeling lonely. You gotta get that guap, dude. But if you go, it's like the only opportunity also for everybody to go on holiday. like all your friends, all your family. Like you're usually not just one person. So yeah, it's the worst time to leave, but at the same time, it's the only time that you can. So you have to make that decision.
Actually,
And
the best
so
time
they don't.
was,
I don't think they have the choice. What's up?
it wasn't the best time September. Wasn't that the best time to stream this year? I feel like it was.
What was September?
Twitch Prime, if you don't know,
Just
chat, you
like,
get one
dude,
free
I
sub
mean,
each and every month.
Sometimes on Twitch it changes. I mean, it's kind of like. But
Wasn't that 2 years ago now?
no, that was just this September.
Oh, you're talking about the gifting or something.
Yeah,
I can't remember. It was good for you. It wasn't that crazy.
It was the gifting thing was pretty shitty because it's like you get a massive spike and then no one refreshes their gift and then you're like.
No, but what do you think December is?
Yeah, it's fair.
I mean,
Related,
that's
the reason why I mentioned this point though, and I had this planned, and the guy posted the thing in chat. So this is a quote: "Our support staff was not reduced to a skeleton crew over the holiday. They take the holidays at a different time of year. The customer support email backlog is entirely due to the size of Betrayal's release." Right. As we talked about earlier with this, like the crazy number of players, has anyone else been having some slight server issues this league?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every time on peak time.
Yeah. And you know how Jonathan said that when he was on Baeclast, the biggest issue they have is servers, and that's what's causing what people think are engine problems?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we're going to get new fucking servers anytime soon? Please, GGG. Please.
I think they always
I'd
just
love
get
to.
overshot. Like it's like the support thing. It's so hard to manage that, right? Because like you're hiring real people for support. Yeah. So for the first month of the league, you want 3 times as many people as you do for the second and third month of the league. But then what are you gonna do? You're gonna be like, hey, you're hired for a month and then fuck off for 2 months and then hey, come back on the first month of the next league. It's like the same sort of mentality here with servers where it's super easy to overshoot it or undershoot it, and then it just so quickly is not a problem or shouldn't be. But this league, it's been a fucking problem
Well,
for like 2 months.
Jonathan was...
Particularly with how remote GGG is from the
Yeah.
rest of the world. Like
Yeah.
New Zealand's hiring practices are relatively strict from what I'm aware, and they don't have a very large population to hire from in the first place. You know, not to say that there isn't a lot of talent in New Zealand, but there's just not a lot of people compared to the, global community.
Jonathan talked about how it was something, I can't remember exactly how he said it, but he was basically saying that before they would fit like 200 people on a server and each people would use up this percentage. He was saying that with how Path of XL's developed, like the percentage of the server has been going up and up with like the state of the builds, and it's like you're fitting less and less people onto a server. So it seems like they kind of have to do something. I don't think they're necessarily going to be in a situation like, oh no, we have too many servers.
Part of the Sextant nerf was a result of having like an overabundance of density in individual maps and taking up server space and that sort of thing. You know, when you could have 9 sextants worth of monsters onto a single map and also block things so you guarantee all that, and then you go in with a 6-man party, like it gets nasty. You're generating like
also
tens and tens of thousands of items.
GGG is also like super duper ambitious, right? So I'm sure they look at it from like a resources point of view where they're like, well, we could put this money towards servers and possibly it's going to be useful, but what if we instead put all this money into this other shit that will definitely get used by players? So they're like, they'd rather take that chance. But usually, yeah, I don't know, with the way the game's been growing, it kind of...
I mean, and that's how we get shit like Delve. It's how we get these amazing new systems. But the more amazing massive systems you add, the more they're like neglecting the basic upkeep, and that's where you get feature bloat, because you keep pumping the game with features, and then the fundamentals fall apart, like we said earlier, with the economy is going weird because of the influx of currency and blah blah blah. But I don't know.
No, it's definitely an issue, and I feel like GGG is always kind of slow at reacting to these sort of things. This like sudden success of something, they typically take a while to adjust to it. And so, yeah, hopefully this won't be the case for this. And eventually they're just going to reach a point where they're like, yeah, the biggest thing that's holding us back at this point is the fact that people are having technical difficulties on launch.
Do you think
But, maybe not.
they discontinued the, what was it, XP, and the other, what was the other?
Vista.
Vista? Do you think that has a big impact in terms of like where people have problems?
Jonathan said
I mean, I know
that-
there's not that many people playing on it, but I mean, it might have
I think
a
more
large
importantly, they're
proportionally.
discontinuing for DX9, right?
Yeah.
That's the
Transitioning
important
forward
part.
to DX11.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jonathan said on this very show when he was on that a big reason why they were getting rid of it is it lets them fully optimize, and they were being held back by having to continue supporting that. It's another reason why I'm really hopeful and I'm really excited for hopefully PoE being good on PlayStation. If PoE on PlayStation, if I can get used to the controls, if it's fluid, I'm just gonna swap to that. It's gonna really fucking hurt.
What?
No, honestly, if it's a more stable experience than PC, I'd swap. If it probably will be fucked load times, because a lot of people will say on Xbox that the load times are fucked. If it's a more stable experience, I would swap. I don't know why you guys are question marking. There are so many question marks in chat.
Like
Okay.
this.
Okay. This is the thing, right? This is the thing. Whoa. Right. If I'm not saying it will, but I'm saying if the game plays better, I will play the better version of the game. I don't think that's that crazy, is it? To say I would play whatever.
I mean, since you play mostly solo self-found, I guess it's not that crazy. Because what you're
if
losing,
you enjoy the console experience,
yeah, you're disconnecting from the larger player base and the option of playing. You know, if the trade in PlayStation is implemented similar to Xbox, it may as well not be implemented.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
For somebody like you and me, Tarke, the PlayStation experience will definitely be better than the PC experience right now. Because there's a lot less of the shit that we really dislike, like power creep and all this sort of stuff. It seems like overall the game's more in line with what it used to be rather than what it is right now. But then at the same time, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of suicide career.
I mean, you can stream it. I mean, the only difference is the UI. Like, literally, honestly, when it comes to watching, because you mostly play SSF, right?
It's pretty different. Yeah, but that's the thing, right? My biggest problem as an SSF player is the fact that most of my fucking characters suck. If I'm not playing like a super meta thing on SSF, my shit sucks. So then if people tune into your stream and they're watching you play Xbox and your character is bound to suck.
Well, you just don't play a shit build.
Also, no, even if you play a good build, you'd have to play like Arc, dude. There's targeting problems, there's mobility problems. You just won't be able to play as fast. That's why the level 100s on Xbox right now are so impressive, because if you watch these guys play, they put in a lot of fucking work into their characters, into their playstyle. It's genuinely challenging. Like, it's interesting. It's a good game.
For the people in chat, there aren't 4 flasks. There are 5 flasks. When they first talked about Xbox, they said they'd do 4, and then they didn't do it because that was dumb. So, the console has 5. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, if you enjoy the thing is, right, I think the most important thing for anyone is just if you enjoy, like, if you generally enjoy something and you have like that makes you more positive during the day. I mean, if you want to play it on PlayStation, man, and you're having a good time, that'll shine through. I'm just saying.
Basically what I'm saying is in the wackadoo world, right?
Sorry.
Where the servers are better and like it doesn't have crazy load times. If you were like Tarke, what do you prefer? Do you prefer having, like, you have randomly, Nugi, like 20 crashes a day at the start of a league and all of this bullshit, or have like a stable experience? I would probably pick the stable experience if it means I'm using a slightly less like proper setup.
I mean, I'm kind of crazy in that regard. Like, I just power through it because I have like, I want this thing and I want it, so I crash. Fuck, get back in. Fuck, get back in. But some people are not like me, and they actually get annoyed by that to the point where they just quit. I'm sure that there are plenty of people who quit over instabilities this league.
I think PlayStation is gonna be. It's kind of like Diablo Immortal. I'm sure it's gonna be a fucking fantastic game. but nobody's gonna play because fuck that shit, right? Like,
But why not?
that's why I understand the whole like, don't you guys have phones? Yeah, dude. Like, that's not the point,
Well,
dog.
that was the funny thing as well. Just briefly talking about Immortal, because I said if it was a good game, I'd play it. You're like, no, you would never play it. I was like, no, if it's good, I'd play it because I like playing good games. I like playing games which I enjoy. And people were like, no, you do something because you enjoy it? Whoa, that's crazy, dude. It's like, fuck me.
I mean, it's like, why would you play solo self-found if you can play Trade League and get all your gear?
Exactly.
I mean,
Why would you play hardcore when you can play softcore, you know?
yeah, just don't, I don't get that argument. If you really like playing on controls, some people like really just like controls better.
Mm.
Right? It's a different game, but I don't know, it's still PoE.
Like, I generally prefer keyboard and mouse, but there are some games which just handle better on controller. Like, if you play Dark Souls on controller versus keyboard and mouse, most people go for the controller because it feels like shit. And having recently played Diablo plays better on a controller. It genuinely plays a lot better on a controller. So, anyway. This is apparently the Tarke ruins what little credibility he had podcast by
No, dude.
by liking
stick to your
things.
guns, man.
Yeah.
You're building up credibility with me.
I agree. I have a lot of respect for you, Tarky, for talking about these things.
Thank you.
But
Brave.
you know, it's very brave. Yeah, exactly. At the same time, I would never admit it publicly, so be ashamed of yourself.
If anyone from GGG is watching, if you will send me a capture card, I will very happily stream Path of that. That's the one thing I'd need to buy a capture card because I can't stream off console with that one. So send me a capture card, dude.
Yeah, GGG. If you send me a capture card, I won't even stream Diablo Immortal.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
Is there anything left for us to talk about? Because we've kind of gone all around the houses. I would like to very briefly mention something with hideouts. What you guys think? There's been some controversy in the hideout competition, which I find pretty funny.
Okay.
Yep. As also fun fact.
About this.
So as the sheriff of Path of Exile, as the heart of the community, I have had people messaging me on Twitter saying, Tarke, there's a few cases of cheating. Can you please send this to the appropriate sources and get it dealt with? So I've been in contact. So I've been snitching on cheaters in the hideout competition. But basically, there's a few very dumb things with the hideout competition as a whole. So if you don't know, there's a competition on. It runs through to like the 14th of February or something. You can't use any hideout that was submitted on the forums before the 2nd of January, which is a really weird rule. So if you're someone like Derek, who showcases hideouts before that, he can't use any of his previous designs. So if you're anyone who ever showed off a hideout on the forums, and then you put it into the competition, you're breaking one of the rules. One of the hideouts that was shown in one of the hideout like showcase videos had been previously submitted on the forums. So, and I quote the message, GGG is violating its own guidelines by showing this thing. Not only that, but the hideout in question was based off the designs of other hideout creators. So there's a whole thing. Some people are being it's a thing.
Shoot them.
Yeah.
Shoot them all in a video game.
Hideout content creation is cutthroat. If you want cutthroat league, get into hideouts, dude.
Dude, it's the same with POD now. Somebody like discovered a dupe and they had to shut down the servers indefinitely right now, Path of Diablo.
I think they
Like,
fixed it.
Yeah, maybe it's fixed now. They're like they were working on it. It was like a pretty short-lived drama, but like it shows how there's always some fucking piece of shit that will take things too far, even in like the most meaningless of things. And yeah, absolutely. If there is a way to cheat, people will just go out of their way every time.
Backhand throwing a bit of shade at hideout decorations, the most meaningless of things, right?
Whoa, that shit,
What do you have against
that
hideouts?
shit is not me. Oh, another dumb thing about it, briefly. In like the rules, they wanted people to make as many different hideouts as possible, but once you've submitted a hideout, you're not allowed to edit it in any way. So if you're someone like Derek, because he's submitted one hideout design, he can't actually make any other hideout designs because if he edits anything in his hideout, then he breaks one of the rules. And also he can't reclaim or reuse any decorations he used in the previous hideout, because then he's breaking the rule by changing the hideout once he submitted it. And he's really annoyed because he's like, I want to make loads of different ones, but I can't.
He has to keep it like intact. He can't, because I thought you had like files that were basically
that was the thing, and that's what he doesn't understand. Is he was saying, why isn't the system that when you submit your hideout is you submit the file, because then you can submit.
It's not.
No, it's not. The system's really dumb. The way the system works.
So stupid.
Why
did they make the hideout file?
Right. So the way that the system works is you go on the forums and you need to upload either pictures or a video of your hideout.
They have hideouts in a file.
No, but it's even better than that. So you upload videos and or pictures, then some poor fucker at GGG has to go through. Bex told me there's over 1,500 submissions. And it's not even over. The competition runs through till halfway through February. So there'll probably be like 2.5 thousand. Someone has to go through all of them. Then they select the ones they like. Then they will probably dupe the file in game or like clone the character or something. Then look at it in game and then be like, oh, this is the one I like. Oh, that's the one I like. And that's how they'll pick the winners. So basically, the system is fucked.
Where, like, instead of having the judges just take a bite of the cake, they have everyone send in pictures of the cake they made, keep them in the fridge for a fucking week, and then the judge comes out to the house of the person who bakes the cake and eats it there. Like,
eats the whole thing too. It's not just a bite either.
And the thing which makes it even dumber, right, is if you're very good at making hideouts, that's like, okay, I've taken all of these different random things and I've laid them on top of each other, like 20 different decorations to make one item. Because it's just through like seeing pictures and videos, you can't see something and be like, oh, someone actually spent 8 hours and stockpiled 500 different things to make that item. They just see an image, right? So unless they actually individually go in and look at every single thing, they will never see the work behind it, which makes it even more backwards, because the better you are at layering, the less impressive it looks, because it looks like it's just a pre-made thing.
Somebody's gonna kill themselves over this. Imagine this one guy who sent in, he's been working on this hideout for like ever, freaking 16 hours a day. He sends it in, and the second he submitted it, he realizes that like one brick is off, and he's like totally traumatized by that, and now he has to wait like 3 weeks. I wouldn't be able to take that pressure. Like, you can't change it. It's fucked, man. What a system. This is the most competitive thing ever in Path of Exile, to be honest.
It's honestly, it's serious shit, dude. And you know what's even worse? Is I made the mistake of submitting a hideout, which at the time I was proud of, but I know I could do better than. But I feel like I can't do anything, because then I'd be violating one of the rules. And I know it doesn't even matter, because the rules are bullshit and no one really cares. But if they do matter, I disqualify myself.
What if you win, and that's going to like traumatize
so
you?
So you're stuck with one hideout now until like the competition is over?
Yeah.
Or how? Oh my god. So
wait, but then why would you submit your hideout now and not at the end date?
Because they were collecting submissions over like 2.5 months. So I made something like a month in.
Submitted like last minute.
Yeah, but I've already submitted once, dude.
Maybe you didn't read through all the rules.
Yeah, I know. I shouldn't
immediately.
Have. But it's what people do. You do, because they said submit as many as you like. So they want people to send in multiple.
Well, you can't submit as many
because you can't reclaim stuff.
Like, so you can have one hideout on each tile set.
Yes.
And submit it.
Assuming that you never reclaim any decorations.
Yeah, assuming you have like infinite favor.
Which is great, because favor is really easy to get right now, and decorations aren't like 350,000 each and stuff. It's fucked. It's genuinely. You know what's really funny, and just I love how exhausted it is. So my boy Derek, he still like makes small little things. You follow him on Twitter. He made this really cool like portal effect. And he was like, I can't actually show you this on the large map device because I can't reclaim any of my old decorations. So for me to show you this, I'd have to like farm for like 100 hours or some shit. And it's fucked. It's like, it's dumb. It's really dumb. It's dumb. And what makes it even better is like, only 0.1% of something of the population actually cares about this. But GGG's made so much work for themselves having to like review all of this shit. It's crazy.
Now we know what they're working on for next league. They're all just sitting there watching, like 120 people going through hideouts.
Yeah. If support hasn't gotten back to you yet, it's because the entire support team is going, oh, who has the nicer tree? I like the way he did his tree. I thought you guys would enjoy that.
Hearing about stuff like that just really annoys me. I'm like, I just want to talk to whoever put that in place. And like, what are you doing?
It's not even better for them. It's
no, it's just
better for GG. It's the worst system for all parties.
Yeah.
Oh no.
It's like Delve, but in hideout format. Eventually, it'll be good.
Why do you hate Delve so much? Come on, Ryan.
It's the same shit, man. Eventually, it'll be great. And it's really fun, you know? I'm sure making the hideout was hella fun, right, Tarke?
I fucking loved it, dude. It's cool. I have a YouTube video and my hideout tells a story. It's sick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like making people like make like a little YouTube and a little like picture compilation, and then having the file attached, and then sending that as a thing.
That would have been perfect.
This is my right. This is my submission here, and you have to like make it a script. You like just make it like kind of like a lot of steps you have to go through, and then you submit, and you're done.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? I didn't. Oh my god! Forcing people to sit there with one hideout. I'm
when people start finding out that people submitted the wrong ones, and then like, you know, somebody's gonna have second place, and he's gonna make a 500-page Reddit thread about how the guy above him cheated and he removed the brick that one time, so he should be disqualified and he should claim it instead. It's so fucked, dude.
Actually, we saw this hideout on Hideout of the Week in 2014, therefore it was submitted before January 2nd. This is bullshit to GGG.
Serious stuff.
God damn it.
You're in second place. Who summoned me? Nice one, Uber. Okay, well.
Are we ending on that? Have I exhausted you all? I think that was pretty good. One thing before we go though, so what's pretty exciting is the new league will be announced in 2 weeks. So the next episode will be right before all the announcements. So I want you guys to get your thinking caps on, because the next Baeclast is going to be predicting the league stuff. And I want you to all actually have predictions, because last time I tried to do this, I had an idea and none of you had any ideas, and it was really painful. So that's your homework. Was that the one
that I overslept? Fuck.
That was that was the one you overslept. That was also the one where you didn't like my idea. You then made me re-explain it like 30 minutes later. You said, "Oh, that's actually pretty sick."
Isn't that like every Baeclast though?
Yeah, basically every Baeclast, yes. But anyway, so that's our homework for the next one. I'd like to thank you all for coming on, and we'll do the thing that Raiz likes to do. Octavian_0. Where can people find your content?
Twitch.tv/Octavian0 without an underscore. Or on YouTube, search Octavian PoE or something like that. You'll find me on YouTube.
I never said I like this. I said we need a proper outro, so not just you going, "Hey guys, podcast over. Who do I host?" That's not like a thing. The outro is good as long as you call it an outro and not an intro this time.
Raiz_QT. Where can people find your content?
Are you fucking gonna call me Raiz_QT? That's like going after my family, dude. Don't ever call me _QT. All right.
Nug_in. Where can people find you on the internet?
Come on, bro.
What? Just Nugiyen anywhere. On Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Google. Done.
Yeah. I'm gonna play the outro now. I'm Tarke. You can find me wherever you're currently watching my content. Bye-bye.
Bye. Are you laughing over the outro?
Yeah, of course I'm laughing for the fucking outro.
You're fucked up, Tarke.